The opinions and views expressed in the following program are those of the speakers and the host, and do not necessarily reflect those of Yoakley Scott Corporation and Your Sports Network.
Yeah, I've been closer to Jesus before, so can you help me out? Oh, can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? Or can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? Or can you help me out? Can you help me out? I've been scared to look at my soul. I've been afraid I would follow the road. Yeah, afraid of the things I've been told.
Welcome into a Wednesday edition of Running Points, presented by Greenwood Chevrolet on Mahoning Avenue in Austintown. Ron Potesta with you. Alongside me, the Ramblin' Wreck from Georgia Tech, Mr. Anthony Hartwig. Anthony, good to see you, brother.
Good to see you. And, a nice Wednesday. We have a Thanksgiving Eve show, and then we're going to have a nice holiday weekend.
Yeah, we're off tomorrow, obviously. Off on Friday, and we'll be back doing this bad boy on Monday. All right, coming up on the show today, Brian Driscoll from IrishBreakdown.com. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish will be back in action Friday. They're taking on the University of North Carolina. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk about Notre Dame's number 2 seed. According to the committee, this is the first of many, many sessions that the committee is going to have. They met last night. It's fodder for talk radio and this format, but it doesn't mean a damn thing.
I mean, these are the only ratings that do care. I mean, now the AP and the coaches pool, that's absolutely irrelevant now.
Yeah.
So now these are the only ratings that really mean anything, because when the end of the season comes around, these are the ones that you kind of look at where teams are positioned.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of controversy already. They have Alabama at number 1.
That's what these are for.
Notre Dame at 2, Clemson at 3, Ohio State at 4.
I think.
What do they have? or Florida at 5, A&M at 6, and
So
Cincinnati
3 of
is
the top
at 7.
6 are the SEC.
Yeah,
and the SEC is saying thank you.
Yeah.
You're the best. It just means more.
Yeah. Well, it's the Buckeye fans are moaning and groaning because
they're
barely
beat Indiana.
Yeah, because they're number 4. Well, you haven't played anybody other than Indiana. The win schedule for not just Ohio State. I can't pick on them because Notre Dame's is horrible too.
I mean,
so is Alabama, and so is Clemson for that matter. All of them
everyone's
are horrible.
schedule this year is pretty bad because you're only playing your conferences.
Yeah, exactly.
And most conferences.
And most conferences
are
are garbage. Exactly. So we'll hear from Brian Driscoll from IrishBreakdown.com coming up at 12:15. 1 o'clock, Brian Tolnar from Mill Creek. We'll have him on, and we'll get his last tip of the week. And I think the tip of the week this week is going to have to do with how you store your clubs and whatnot. And I have a story with that, which I'm going to tell because it's kind of a lesson into how you should store your clubs. That'll be coming up at 1 o'clock, and then we'll hear from John Vargo from the Vindicator and the Tribune Chronicle coming up at 2 o'clock. About 24 hours ago, that's kind of like 22 hours ago, in the 2 o'clock hour, DJ came in here yesterday breaking the story that Governor DeWine, in his press conference, suggested, because Governor DeWine never mandates anything, he just suggests stuff because he's milquetoast. Neither here nor there. He suggested that nobody show up, that nobody would be allowed to attend winter sports in high school. So we were pontificating and whatnot. Well, this is horrible for the fans, good business for us because we'll be the only game in town, da-da-da-da-da-da. The OHSAA didn't even take 10 minutes to do a heel turn and say, we're not on board with this. We're going to let parents see their kids. And I think it was a wise decision albeit probably a decision that's not going to come into play, and we'll explain that in a little bit. But the OHSAA made a wise decision because, as I pointed out yesterday, you show me someone that has the stones to block a parent from seeing their kid play basketball or whatever sport, it's not going to happen. You're just not going to be able to do that.
Right, and I'm sure the OHSA in that 10 minutes got about 5,000 phone calls and 10,000 emails from angry parents that thought that they were now no longer able to go to their kids' games. And once DeWine lets that cat out of the bag, no matter what the OHSA does, it's hard to kind of really, get that message out, because I broadcasted Canfield West Branch last night, and there was a mom that saw me, us going into the door and said, "How are you into the game? Parents aren't even allowed." So even at that point, which was much after the OHSAA came out and said parents are allowed, all people heard was what the governor said, and they thought that the parents weren't allowed, and then they had to kind of square that away. But the OHSA was like, no, no.
We're not going to do this. Governor DeWine can say this. We're not doing this. We're not going to be the ones that get suplexed off the top rope. No.
You try to say parents can't go, they'll show up at the doors with pitchforks and torches.
Oh, absolutely.
They're getting into that game. Good luck stopping them.
Yeah, you're not going to stop a parent from watching their kid play. It's just as simple as that. Now, having said that, I just cannot see, business-wise or other, how you could possibly play games until January, because from a business standpoint, and let's be honest, all the schools are trying to make as much money as humanly possible. If you're only allowing parents to watch the kids play,
now you're getting less revenue.
Yeah, you're getting no revenue, and you're probably not even going to get enough revenue for the light bill, where you have to turn the lights on.
Because you got to think now, you get parents for both rosters, so that's probably at the most 40 parents.
Yeah,
that's it. And then you get if you're a YSN school, you get 25%, 10% of purchases every week. But even that, not a lot.
It's not going to be enough, exactly.
And so,
yeah, I'll be very surprised if anybody plays basketball or any winter sport until January. And this was
which
supposed
is sad
to
because
happen.
You already started, and it's sad because now the teams that did start are going to have to stop and get out of that groove and then get back in that groove. And
this is why
we've said it off the air. This decision should have been made 2 or 3 weeks ago when a lot of schools weren't playing football. There was nothing to occupy their time. What were they doing in the last 2 or 3 weeks? I mean, I know no one wants to say that, make that decision to put. No one wants to do that, be that person, but you
got to be that.
You got to be that person. So.
There's no two ways about that. Look, if you realized without a shadow of a doubt that this was going to be happening, and it's pretty damn clear that this was going to happen, then you simply sit back and say, look, we're not playing any winter sports until you go back to school on January the 4th. You'll have a 7-week excursion between January 4th and the tournaments. And we'll go from there.
And I'd hate to say it because I don't want to be devil's advocate here, but is it a coincidence that, yes, we've started, but it's the girls that have started, and the boys start Friday, and now we're having this decision? So, maybe one of those things where, although now the boys are starting, we better make this decision,
If that's the case, then that's wrong, too.
I know, but it's possible.
It could be.
Because girls' sports definitely do kind of get pushed under the rug sometimes. So,
yeah, and it's wrong. I mean, Crestview and Springfield played a spirited game on Monday night. Now they got to shut everything down. A pretty good chance they're going to be shutting everything down.
West Branch has played 2.
West Branch has played 2 games. Canfield just got done beating West Branch last night. I mean, there's schools that have already started their season. The absolute worst thing that you can do, and we talked about this. Oh, we're going to play a couple of games. Oh, we're going to shut the season down. Oh, well, you're not going to play again until January. Come on.
And then the real set, a lot of teams are going to lose their really high caliber games on their schedule. I mean,
absolutely.
You talk about teams that you're traveling to play at this point in the season. You're going to go travel to play them when they're in their bulk of their conference schedule in February, and it's going to be a lot harder. I mean, South Range, for example, they're supposed to travel to Laurel on Saturday. Laurel is the regional runner-up, the team that West Branch beat to go to the state semifinals, and South Range is a runner-up. So that was supposed to be a marquee game in the area, and now – I mean, right now it's still scheduled, but that county is in a travel ban. I don't know if that game's going to stand up.
I can't imagine it will be.
So,
What's the alternative here? If you leave the county, do you have to quarantine for 2 weeks?
I have no idea.
I mean, that's my understanding.
Like, I know
if you're
that
leaving the county and coming back to that county,
Right.
you got to quarantine.
And then I know when that travel ban got up, they didn't cancel the game yet. The game's still on as of now, as of I've been told. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
craziness. It just,
And then last night, Trumbull County just said no.
well,
so
and
all
Mahoning
schools-
County is going to have that announcement today, or
They're
they're
having a meeting
thinking
to
of
discuss it.
they're having the meeting to discuss it. We'll see what happens. Who knows what Columbiana County does? But look, I mean, if Trumbull and Mahoning County both
I
say
think one of
we're
these-
not doing this,
Yeah.
what's Columbiana County going to do? You can only play your teams so often. I mean,
They'll go to Columbiana and they'll try to go to like Portage or whatever. If teams want to play, they'll find a way to play. I mean, we saw we're seeing teams scramble just to schedule more games in December now because all of a sudden Trumbull County is gone. I mean, I think Poland scheduled the game last minute last night. Now the girls are going to travel to Waterloo. I mean, that wasn't planned, but they lost the Warren Harding game, so they have to make it up somehow. So these teams want to play. They want to fill their schedules, and that's why we need a decision on whether or not teams are playing or not. That way, all this, because if we come out and say, well, we're canceled until January, all that work putting into making a December schedule in the last couple hours, out the window. So it's just crazy.
During the course of the show, we're going to talk a little bit about how many games you can squeeze in. January the 4th is when everyone goes back to school from Christmas break. There is, depending on when the tournaments start, there's 6 weeks for the girls, 7 weeks for the boys. Now, you can also make the very interesting decision of having the boys and the girls tournaments going on at the exact same time, which would certainly make things even more entertaining.
Well,
but
then,
it would give both teams, both boys and girls, 7 weeks to fill a schedule.
I don't know what they do with venues. I guess it wouldn't matter because they don't play on the same day, and you could definitely clean and sanitize a venue from a day to a day. But like girls Division III play at Struthers, and then the boys Division IV play at Struthers. So when you're looking at venues that use the same facility for the boys tournament and the girls tournament, and I don't even know how tournament venues are going to go. They might do what they did with volleyball and say teams host all the way up until regionals anyway. So do away with hosting a district.
Well, and we also might get what we saw with soccer and volleyball with the double
I think
supersized
you're going to get
districts.
that. Absolutely. I think that's a thing that looked like it had nothing to do with COVID, to be honest. It looked like it was just something, because what does that have to do with the COVID protocols, making your district bigger? I think that's just something they want to do in the future, to me.
And it could wind up being that way. Who knows? All I know is this should have been done. And again, hindsight's always 20/20, but this should have been done, and an announcement should have been made one way or the other, an announcement with teeth on it, and not one of this bullshit, we suggest. No. Put some teeth on this thing and say, you're not doing this, or you can do this, period. And it should have been made prior to the start of the winter sports season.
Well, it's funny because OHSA came out and said we're doing this. Like, they were adamant we are starting winter sports. As far as we're concerned, we're starting it. So the OHSA did it. They were like, okay, if the governor is not going to shut us down, we're starting. We're not pushing it back.
Then they should have had conversations with the governor, and this just continues to be the problem that we have seen ever since the pandemic first reared its ugly head in March. The communication between the governor's mansion and the OHSAA is practically non-existent. And the OHSAA can sit back and say, well, we have the lieutenant governors here. Obviously, that's not doing you a damn bit of good, because the lieutenant governor and the governor aren't even on the same page. So this should have been taken care of before the start of the winter sports season. So now you have teams that have played 1 and 2, and a couple of teams might have even played 3 games already. And now you got to tell them, oh, by the way, your season is now suspended until this particular date. And oh, by the way, you might not have fans showing up for any of your games
not
this year.
just games suspended. You're not allowed to do anything. So your whole team activity is suspended. So you've practice for a month, you've gotten ready, you've been into game shape, and now you're going to have to not practice for a month and then go back into being in game shape.
And here's the other thing.
It's asking for injuries.
Absolutely. And here's the other thing. Okay, you can start your season back up, let's say January the 4th, but let's be honest. Are you really going to be starting the season January the 4th with no practice?
Yeah, when do you allow them to practice again? That's the question. I mean, like, are you shutting everything down until January, or you're just saying we're going to start games in January?
Yeah, because if you're shutting everything down until January, then you can expect basketball season to start in February or late January.
Yeah.
I mean, this is absurd.
You got to give them at least a week to get into the gym, back into the gym.
Absolutely, you do. And then you're running out of time.
You don't have to. If you don't, you're just going to get really sloppy basketball for the month of January.
Sure.
Which I'm sure that OHSA is fine with because they don't care about anything until the tournament's hit.
Well, yeah, because that's where the money is located. And
all the coaches are going to be pretty upset though because they don't want their teams to look sloppy for a month.
And here's the other thing: do you just want to play in your conference and that's it? Because if that's the case. Well, if it's an 8-team conference, you got 14 games.
Well, I was talking to Garfield's coach on Saturday, and he said that their conference just extended it so they play each other 3 times instead of 2, instead of going out and trying to schedule more games and trying to find more opponents. So they're going to travel to one team twice, and and then he said he had the bad luck of trying to travel to Ravenna Southeast twice in the year, and that's their best team in that conference. So he was kind of upset about that. But that's what they're doing over there. I mean, I don't know what other conferences are going to do. But
yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we just go conference play, because if that's the case, then 14 games for an 8-team conference, 12 games for a 7-team conference, 10 games for a 6-team conference, and you do the math. All right, we're going to take a timeout. We'll address this during the course of the show without any question. We'll take a timeout. On the other side, we will hear from Brian Driscoll from IrishBreakdown.com. Notre Dame is officially number 2 according to the committee. It'll be the first of many committee get-togethers. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk about Notre Dame's upcoming game on Friday against North Carolina without some key players. We'll talk with Brian Driscoll coming up in a bit. It is a Wednesday edition of Running Point presented by Greenwood Chevrolet on Mahoning Avenue in Austintown.
21 News.
Let's get right to our top story tonight.
More experienced reporters.
A new Wilmington restaurant.
Lordstown.
Telling more local stories.
We'll look at efforts
boy is recovering from a broken.
Around our valley.
Community in Niles. We are here in Youngstown, right up.
Because you expect.
It's important for everyone. No place like home.
More local news.
In Mercer County Court.
21 News is our valley's #1 local news.
Welcome home to a home made homier with Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods. Inspiration starts at BairdBrothers.com and is turned into reality when high-quality hardwoods are delivered right to your home. Baird Brothers has the latest design trends, shiplap and skinny lap interior siding, antique oak rustic flooring, and, well, you'll find them all at BairdBrothers.com. Ordered easily, delivered conveniently, enjoyed comfortably. BairdBrothers.com.
Attention football fans, order Coca's Pizza tailgate package for only $54.99. You'll receive 24 slices of our delicious cheese pizza, 20 jumbo wings, and 2 of our famous foot-long pepperoni rolls. Coca's Pizza, we serve it hot.
Hi, this is Tommy Clem, owner of WRS Insurance Solutions.
WRS Insurance Solutions is a local independent agency that specializes in life, Medicare, long-term care, and disability products. Call us at 330-953-3722 or visit us at wrsinsuranceSolutions.com to learn more.
Good luck to all the student athletes in the Valley.
Your Armstrong services are more important than ever. There are more and more connected devices in the home these days. To get the most out of your experience, you need a network that is always getting better. You deserve superior performance, and that's what Armstrong offers every day. Whether you're working from home, enjoying your favorite content together, or simply catching up while apart, count on Armstrong to keep you connected to what matters most.
to Greenwood Chevrolet because
I was really interested in looking at the tracks.
Because I wanted my dream truck.
Because I've been going there for 20 years. I think whenever we go there, whatever car we're looking for, they have tremendous inventory.
If you're looking for people who care about you, Greenwood is the place to go.
You know, it's like family there. The girls know me in service. It's Miss Kim in the Tahoe.
I'm really happy that I went
to Greenwood Chevrolet.
Because they really went
the extra mile for me.
Now we're going the extra mile for you, only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
For heating, cooling, and indoor air quality, the Mahoning Valley trusts MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning, offering worry-free repair, service, and installation. Call MP Vivo today for a free estimate.
MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning. We're your energy-efficient experts.
Welcome back to a Wednesday edition of Running Point on ysnlive.com, presented by Greenwood Chevrolet on Mahoning Avenue in Austintown. We go to the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning hotline, where we find our good friend, our Notre Dame guru. You find his work at irishbreakdown.com, irishbreakdown.com. Brian Driscoll joining us on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning hotline. Brian, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. Just getting ready for Thanksgiving.
There you go. It'll be a quiet one in Casa de Potesta for sure. Just mom, dad, myself, and yeah, it's going to be a quiet one thanks to COVID this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's been me and my wife, but that's normally how it is. Our family's all in Virginia and in Ohio, so we'll have a nice big old turkey, and we'll have it for about 3 straight days.
There you go. Nothing wrong with that. All right. Yesterday, the first of many committee get-togethers, and they all decided that the top 4 teams would be Alabama 1, Notre Dame 2, Clemson 3, Ohio State number 4. Brian, are you surprised at the top 4 or anything outside of the top 4?
Top 4, no. That's how I had it. I do a top 25 every week, and I have had Clemson over Ohio State in the number 3 spot for a couple weeks now, just because I think their overall body of work is better, and Ohio State's got a few more holes in what they're doing, but they'll keep getting better. But yeah, the top 4, I had the same. I was surprised that Texas A&M was there at number 5. Yes, they have the good win over Florida, but they haven't looked great. I mean, you're going to get the constant annual overhyping of SEC teams. You know, Georgia in the top 10, despite being a really ugly 5-2. Ron, not only are they 5-2, but they've had some really ugly, unimpressive wins against some really mediocre football teams. And I was surprised Cincinnati was 7. I know a lot of people were surprised that BYU was as low as 14. I thought that was a little too low, but the reality is, you're talking about playing North Alabama, Texas State, Boise State being your only big win, and Boise State hasn't exactly lit the world on fire this year. So not a ton of surprises, except I think Notre Dame fans were excited that they were number 2 since the last 4 national champions began the first ranking as the number 2 team.
You know, I said this on social media. Of course, my Buckeye brethren wanted to come at me with pitchforks and whatnot. I'm not convinced Ohio State's the best football team in the state of Ohio. I think Cincinnati would give Ohio State all they can ask for and then some. There is something about this Bearcats team this year. And I know they played last year and Ohio State destroyed them. But the Buckeyes aren't nearly as good this year on defense. And I think Cincinnati has gotten really just a whole lot better this year.
They have. I mean, you had a lot of young guys on defense last year, like Ahmad Gardner, who was a freshman All-American, or now in year 2. I think Marcus Freeman is a tremendous young defensive coordinator that's kind of on my watch list as far as if Clark Lee leaves Notre Dame, a guy that Notre Dame should take a look at. And I think Mike Denbrock's now in, year 2 or 3 of running that offense at Cincinnati, and I think they're really starting to get rolling. And look, the big key is what, Ron? What do we talk about all the time? You got to have really good quarterback play to be a really good team in college football, and Desmond Ritter's been outstanding this year. So I certainly think Ohio State would be given a game by Cincinnati. I still think Ohio State would win because I think Ohio State's got way too much firepower. I mean, look, I thought Ohio State played really sloppy football on offense against Indiana, and they still had over 600 yards of offense and 42 points. And I think the difficult thing, Ron, when evaluating teams this year, you're looking at Cincinnati after 8 games. We're looking at Notre Dame after 8 games and comparing it to where Ohio State is at 4 games. Well, Notre Dame, for example, their 4th game was a 12-7 win over Louisville. Ohio State's going to keep getting better, and they're going to keep working out some of the kinks. They're still in year one of Kerry Coombs being the defensive coordinator. They're going to make some improvements there. There's some holes on defense that I don't see being completely solidified, but Ohio State didn't play great and still beat a pretty game and a pretty good Indiana team. So I think the Buckeyes are going to keep getting better, and that's why I still had them 4, but I still think Clemson's a better team, which is why I rank Clemson ahead of them.
How in the world can people just have this conversation with give me the top 4 when and you've stated this. Cincinnati has played two times as many games as Ohio State. Notre Dame has played twice as many games. The Southeastern Conference hasn't played the same amount of games. The Big Ten and the SEC are, I think, 2 games apart. SEC's played 6 games. Big Ten has played 4 games. Hell, the Pac-12's only played 2 games. How can anyone with no uniformity whatsoever, how can anyone sit back and say, well, we're going to pick the top 4 teams? What are you basing this on?
Right. I think that's what makes this a unique challenge. And I think the committee chair last night said, look, we're trusting the film a lot more than we have in the past. They're not using as much of the analytics. Because the analytics this year I've never been a big analytics guy when it comes to the rankings of teams because it's so difficult to evaluate conferences. It's not like the NFL where there's a certain level of, the gap between 1 and 32 in the NFL isn't like it is between 1 and 130 in college football. It's much narrower. There's far more parity in the NFL than there is in college football, and I think it's especially challenging this year when you look at it where there just hasn't been a lot of out-of-conference scheduling. The SEC and the Big Ten and the Pac-12 especially aren't playing anybody out of conference, and you look at the teams that the ACC play, Clemson played Citadel, Notre Dame plays South Florida, so I think it's very difficult to challenge, and they're basically what they're saying is we're gonna rely on the film a lot more, and I think that's going to have to be it. But the other problem I see, Ron, is there's a lot more, I think, preseason confirmation bias than there has been in the past because you're only playing each other. I think Georgia being 9 is a perfect example. I don't see how anyone can watch what Georgia has done this year and say they're a top 10 football team. But it's that preseason confirmation bias of what you thought they would be, and you look at who they lost to, and you say, oh, okay, yeah, they're a really good football team, when in reality they're really not.
I love it. Keep shoveling on Georgia, please.
Well, they're making it easy.
You're making it easy, yeah. When you look at you're talking eye test, and it's hard because like you said, there's not a lot of out of conference games, and some of these conferences, quite frankly, aren't that good. I mean, the Big Ten, Ohio State's not really going to have much of a game for the rest of their schedule, at least on paper. When you're looking at eye test, what kind of things does the committee look at that go beyond who the team is playing that tells them, how these teams would stack up against the rest of the top 10?
I think there are several things. I think number one is balance. I think balance between offense and defense. I think that's one reason why you have Clemson ahead of Ohio State, because you could say Clemson and Ohio State are very similar offensively, but so far through 8 games, the Clemson defense has been much better than the Ohio State defense. So I think balance is part of it. I think dominance is the other aspect, and I think that's why I was so surprised that Cincinnati was ranked below Texas A&M and Florida, because not only is Cincinnati winning all their games, they're absolutely dominating teams. I think the win over Central Florida, which is a very good road win over a UCF team, was the only single-digit game they've had all year. I mean, I think previously their closest game was, 14 points back against Army way back in September. They're just destroying teams, and I think that's got to be a factor in it, too. And I think that's the one thing. Some Notre Dame fans are saying, why don't you think Notre Dame should be ahead of Alabama number 1? I said, well, Alabama is not only a better team on the eye test, but Alabama is just obliterating decent teams, good teams. I mean, they destroyed Texas A&M. They just hung a 63 on a Kentucky team that supposedly has a really good defense. So I think that's the other part of it, is just, are you dominating week after week, or are you just kind of, scraping by and you've got 3 wins because the other team had half their starting lineup out with COVID, those kind of things, or are you out there going out there and actually physically imposing your will on teams? And I think that's why the Boston College win was so important for Notre Dame, because let's be honest, outside of the Pitt game, Notre Dame hadn't had a lot of really convincing victories over Power 5 teams. You know, the Pitt game was convincing, but, you know, Georgia Tech, they were sloppy. Duke, they were sloppy. Florida State, they were sloppy. Louisville, they were sloppy. I think Notre Dame the last two games has been far more impressive, in my opinion, than they were for most of the first six.
Brian, is that safe to say then that if we're going by the eye test and we're going by how dominant teams are, now you have to put your foot on the gas pedal, and if it means running up the score, which is an ugly term, but if a team has to do that, is that something that we're going to see from Notre Dame from here on out?
I don't think so for a couple reasons. Number one is Brian Kelly's that's not who Brian Kelly is. And I somewhat respect that. I don't always agree with it, but I somewhat respect it. And number two, you know, I think the committee has really done a good job in recent years of actually doing what they say they're going to do, which is watch the film. You know, and say, well, you can't watch that many teams. Well, you don't need to watch all 50 teams that you're considering. You really only need to watch the teams that you think are legit playoff contenders. And I think when you watch this Notre Dame team play, you see a really good offense. You see an offense that's ascending. And I think those are the things they look for. If they only beat North Carolina by 7 and they beat, you know, Syracuse by 20 and Wake Forest by 10 and then lose a close game to Clemson, they're going to be a playoff team. You know, I think that's the big thing. It's just you keep winning, number one. And then secondly, if you do lose to Clemson, it's got to be close. Because, Ron, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, but the one thing I think is true this year is I think there's a bigger gap between 1 through 4 than there has been in everybody else than there has been in a long time. I think there really isn't a 5. I mean, Cincinnati you can make a case for, but again, there's the difficulty of AAC versus Power 5. When you just look at the Power 5 contenders, you look at the 1 through 4 teams, I think there's a big gap between Ohio State and Clemson and everybody else. And that's why I think there's going to be a little bit more leeway for a Notre Dame to lose a close game and still get in. For Clemson to have their loss to Notre Dame, if they then go beat Notre Dame, to still get in, because I do think there's such a gap when I look at on paper between those 4 teams and everybody else.
I agree that there is a gap between 4 and 5. Although I would also say Cincinnati's getting punished because they're not a Power 5 conference team. Because if Cincinnati were let's put Cincinnati in the Big 12 for a second. And the Big 12 isn't exactly a great conference, but if Cincinnati were in the Big 12 or the Pac-12, which geographically is stupid, but follow me, it would be, oh, hey, wait a second, Cincinnati, this is an impressive team. They're getting punished because they're a mid-major. And I would argue the All-American or the AAC, I would argue that the AAC right now, as it stands, might be on par with some of the bottom tier of the Power 5 conference.
Well, I think if you take the top 4 or 5 teams in the AAC and play them against the top 4 or 5 teams, the Big 12 and the Pac-12, I think that they would win at least 2 games. I certainly agree with that. But I also think there's some understandable merit to that, because then we could say, well, why not BYU, right? BYU is 8-0, and they're annihilating teams, but they're not playing anybody. And I think Cincinnati's quality of competition is certainly better than BYU's, but if you put them in the Big 12, would they be 8-0 with an average margin of victory of around 30? I don't think that they would, and I think that has to be taken into account. Now, look, they beat Memphis 49-10. Memphis is a decent football team. They've spanked SMU. SMU was ranked for a while. I mean, and they crushed SMU in the second half. So I'm sympathetic to your argument, Ron. I had Cincinnati 5th in my top 25. I think they're a legitimately good football team. I think if they were an ACC team, I think they're a 9-3 caliber team in the ACC. And depending on what their schedule would be, if they're lucky enough to not have Notre Dame and Clemson on their schedule, they could be a 10-win ACC team. So I agree with you, but I also think that it's a lot easier to run the table when you're not having to face those teams. And let's be honest too, UCF and Memphis are both good football teams, but they're not what they've been in previous years. And I think the committee sees that, and I think that's something else that has hurt Cincinnati a little bit.
Yeah, with such a big gap between 1 through 4 right now and the rest of the field, I mean, if one of those 4 stub their toe and they have to put, a Cincinnati or a Texas A&M or whatever it may be into the top 4, that might lead to a really not interesting playoff. Do you think that might weigh into the committee's decisions down the road?
No, I think the committee has done a pretty good job of not really worrying too much about that, really trying to find the 4 best teams. I think that's been their key. And I think there's really 2 scenarios that could really throw a wrinkle into this. Number one is, what if Notre Dame beats Clemson again? What if Notre Dame beats Clemson by a field goal and Clemson's 10-2, and their 2 losses are to the number 2 team in the country, one in overtime, double overtime, and one in a last-second field goal situation? How do you view that 10-2 record against Texas A&M and Florida? Texas A&M's 1 loss, or Cincinnati if they're undefeated. I think that could get very interesting. And then the other one is, and this is even a bigger shakeup, what happens if Clemson beats Notre Dame and then Florida beats Alabama? That's when you could really get an interesting conversation. How would, and not just would that knock Notre Dame out, but what does that do for Ohio State? What is Ohio State's 8-0? Let's say they run the table to go 8-0. How does that stack up to Notre Dame's 11-1 with a loss to Clemson? So that's where you could get serious chaos from a fan and ESPN standpoint, because I think Kirk Herbstreit would lose his mind in that situation. If he was upset as he was about BYU not getting in and Georgia a couple of years ago not getting in, if an undefeated Ohio State team gets knocked out and Florida jumps them because they beat Alabama, I would pay money to watch that college football playoff rankings episode with Kirk Herbstreit following that game.
Look, I would pay money just to be in the a fly in the wall in the committee room and just to hear the argument of how are you going to deny an undefeated Ohio State team over a 1-loss SEC team? Oh my God, you'd have chaos in the North. Civil War Part 2, the sequel, would be broken out. No 2 ways about it. All right, for Notre Dame, obviously, they have a game this week against North Carolina. And Brian Driscoll, our guest, you can read his work, his outstanding work, I might add, irishbreakdown.com. Notre Dame is going to be without Tommy Kramer. He had an appendectomy, and he's going to be out anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks. This one came on him pretty suddenly. And obviously, one of the strengths Notre Dame has this year is that offensive line. Taking Tommy Kramer out of this offensive line, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Well, I think they could easily overcome Tommy Kramer being out. What makes it challenging is they're also without Jarrett Patterson, the starting center, who broke his foot against Boston College. So now during the bye week, you've now lost 2 offensive linemen from what has been your best unit. And so it certainly makes an interesting scenario. There's really 2 trains of thought on this, Ron. One is, from a talent standpoint, Notre Dame's going to be fine. They're putting Josh Lugg at right guard. Josh Lugg started the final 5 games of last year. Robert Hainsey got hurt, and he was really good. He's a very talented player. This is a guy that was a top 100 recruit. So there's talent there. And then Zeke Correll, a Cincinnati kid, is going to step in at center, and he's a redshirt freshman. He's another top 100 recruit. So they're going to have 5 talented players. The second train of thought for me is, yeah, there's going to be talent, but what's made this offensive line so good is how well they play together. The cohesion and the communication of this 5-man group this season has been outstanding. That's my bigger concern than will they have talented players out there. It's, can they still play on that same page, or is there going to be one guy off here, one guy off there? Is the communication going to be where it needs to be to pick up the twists and the stunts and the blitzes and all those kind of things? That's my big question mark. And I would even say concern heading into this game. And if they can handle that part of it, then I think the offensive line is going to be fine. It's a lot like we talked about against Clemson, Ron, where I said, maybe Clemson's not number 1 in the country without Trevor Lawrence, but they're still top 5. That's kind of how I feel about this offensive line. Maybe they're not the number 1 offensive line without Patterson and Kramer, but they're still top 5. And I think that's going to be enough for them to go out in these next few games and get W's. If they lose against North Carolina, it won't, in my opinion, it won't be because of the offensive line.
Brian, we talked a little bit about the offensive line with Patterson being out, and there was still up in the air as far as who would replace him. Zeke Correll, 6'3", 295-pound redshirt freshman. Are they going to give him the responsibilities of calling stuff out, or is that going to go to one of the veterans?
My understanding is he's going to make those calls. And now there will be, you have a quarterback behind him who's very experienced, and then you have a right tackle and a left tackle who can obviously help with those lines of communication. And this is where not having a lot of people in the stands, especially in North Carolina, where I don't know if they'll have any people in the stands, helps you. because now it's a little easier to hear what he's calling. And if you're the quarterback, to know that, hey, no, we got to slide the protection the other way, and then you make the correction. And the same thing with the offensive tackle. So, look, Zeke Correll's been in the system longer than Jarrett Patterson was when he took over as the starter last year. So I think he'll be able to handle those things. And from what I was told, talking to my sources, he'd had a really good week of practice and was pushing Josh Lugg for that center job before Tommy Kramer got hurt. So he's starting as much because of he earned it with Patterson out. It's about, well, we just got to figure out the next man in, because they had other options. They could have moved Dylan Givens over to guard, kept Lugg at center, which is something they were working on. They've got John Dirksen, another Ohio guy who's a junior now, who's a good quality backup guard. They could have moved Robert Hainsey around. So they had plenty of options. They put Zeke Correll in there because they think he can handle the job.
Josh Lugg, and I know he was playing some tackle. I kind of like the idea of getting this big body inside and letting him play guard. I kind of like this idea because I have the feeling that Lugg could very well be his best position. I think he could be more of a mauler in the guard position than he is a tackle. I'm not sure he's footwork wise he's ready to play the tackle position on an NFL level. But if you move him inside to play guard, I think that could be Lugg's best position.
Yeah, I thought he played the tackle spot well last year, but that's for a college guy. To your point, if we're looking forward to the NFL, I would agree with you. You used the word mauler, and I think that ties into the reason I think Josh Lugg is better at guard, and it's more than footwork or athleticism, it's demeanor. To be a tackle, you have to have a level of patience, and I think at times Josh Lugg last year would get impatient because he wants to be so physical and aggressive. He was able to overcome it because he's so long and he's strong. And let's be honest, the final 5 games of the year last year, they didn't play anybody that plays defense worth a darn. So that helped him as well too. So not that North Carolina's got a great defense, but I think inside a guard, he's playing in more of a phone booth. To your point about footwork, that helps his athleticism. Is kind of, not only is he just getting by at tackle, but he can shine athletically at guard. I think he can do some of the movement pulls and traps effectively. I think it helps him as a pass blocker. I think he held his own at right tackle. I think he can be a dominant pass blocker at guard if he can get just the assignments and the techniques down. And I think it allows that kind of aggressive demeanor to accent more. It's kind of like Quentin Nelson. Quentin Nelson could have played tackle at Notre Dame. He had the athleticism and the length, but his demeanor was better suited for guard, and just that physicality, that toughness, that playing a phone booth, that backyard brawler kind of guy. And I think Josh Lugg has a similar demeanor. He's not Quentin Nelson. Please don't mistake that at all. But I just think that demeanor, that Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh demeanor, I think would be best suited at guard for him than it would tackle or center.
Brian Driscoll, our guest. You can see his work at irishbreakdown.com. All right, let's break down North Carolina. And you made mention, defensively, North Carolina not so good, but boy, oh boy, do they have a lot of returning starters from the offense. And Mac Brown, he's slowly but surely starting to get some of his players into the fold. He's only in his second year, so it's going to probably be another year or two before you see the best of the best out of North Carolina. But he's returning 10 of his starters, and that offense ain't too shabby.
It's a really outstanding offense. And honestly, they don't have the high-level talent like Clemson had, but I think this is a better offense, and there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, I think Sam Howell right now is better than DJ Uiagalelei is for Clemson right now. Now, that may not be true down the road, but when that kid was making his second start compared to Sam Howell, who's in his second season as a starter, I think he's a better player. I think they're better on the offensive line, and I think they have more depth at running back. They have 2 running backs. Everybody talks about Sam Howell in the pass offense. They have 2 running backs that are on pace for 1,000 yards in the regular season. The level of balance that they bring to the table is really hard to find. I mean, this is a team averaging over 300 passing yards a game, but also averaging 233.5 rushing yards per game. So they're a very balanced offense. I think De'Ami Brown might be the most explosive receiver Notre Dame has faced all year to this point. The system with Phil Longo is really hard to defend. It's that RPO base. So when a team can run for 233 yards a game and they're that good in the RPO game, it really makes them hard to defend. And if you look at their numbers, Ron, they were not great out of the gate. First 2 games, I think Sam Howell is about 275 yards a game passing. They only averaged, I think, like 28 points per game, and you had part of that was helped by a 2-point conversion at the end of the BC game. Since that point in time, he's averaging about 370 passing yards a game, and the offense is averaging in the mid to high 40s. In the last 4 games, they're averaging 51 points a game. So this is a really dynamic, explosive offense that, to me, is as good of an offense as Notre Dame is going to face all year, unless they get into the playoff and have to play in Alabama or Florida.
You know, you put out a piece yesterday about not only was yesterday a big day because Notre Dame got ranked number 2, but they also got a commitment from someone that you thought was a really big sleeper, a class of 2021. Talk about that and who they got and why you think it's such a big deal.
Yeah, they got a young man named Jojo Johnson, who's from Maryville High School in Indiana. He's an interesting player because he camped at Notre Dame a couple years ago, and I really liked his athleticism. I loved his footwork. I thought he was a quality athlete. But at the time, he was a receiver, and I just didn't see him as a Notre Dame caliber receiver. I thought he was more of a Cincinnati level receiver, and of course, that's where he was committed to for a while, was Cincinnati. But Cincinnati actually convinced him that he was better as a corner, and I agree with that. He's 5'11", 180. I think his athleticism, the footwork, the fluidity, all those kind of things really project extremely well to corner. Well, he started focusing more on corner, and then Notre Dame took notice and said, hey, we think he can be a really good corner too, and they started recruiting him. He's a really talented player. He's got a lot to learn as a defensive player because he was a receiver for most of his career, but I love his athleticism. And then landing him too also gives you more flexibility to move a Philip Riley to safety if you need to, because safety has been a problem spot for Notre Dame in the 2020 and 2021 classes. So, it looks like they got 4 corners in the class, but in reality, all 4 of those guys aren't going to stay at corner. One of those players, and I would predict that it'd be Philip Riley, is going to end up moving to safety. And I think Philip Riley could be a pretty good corner. I think he could be an outstanding safety with some work. So I think not only did you add a good football player, but I think it now strengthened another position, which I had considered sort of a weak spot in this class. Now you have Philip Riley or Ryan Barnes with Justin Walters at safety, and that kind of answers what was one of the remaining needs in this class.
The beautiful part of this is the kid hasn't played corner all that much, so the good news is he has not developed bad habits. And when you get someone who's incredibly athletic and raw, you certainly want to get on that person and try to get him to commit to your school, because those are the kind of guys that could wind up being elite players because they don't have any bad habits. You can coach this person without having to get rid of the bad habits that he developed, whether it be in junior high and continued on through high school.
Yeah, a kid that raw is going to have technique problems. But I think what you're referring to as far as habits those are things that are trained into you over the course of time. He's going to show up in Notre Dame with a lot of areas where it's not going to be good technique-wise, but it's going to be easy to break those technique issues because he's just not locked into it, and there's not the same muscle memory and the same conviction that, hey, I've been playing corner like this for 6 years, kind of thing. And so to your point, I do think it's going to help them get him going pretty quickly. And I could see him in his first year or two at Notre Dame being a guy that contends for the nickel spot and eventually competes for an outside starting job. I really like this kid. And the other thing too, Ron, I think kids that come to Notre Dame because they always wanted this. He always wanted this offer. He's been to several Notre Dame games as a recruit. He camped at Notre Dame. This was an offer that he had been hoping for. And kids like that usually come to Notre Dame pretty hungry. To kind of prove that like Jack Kaiser, for example, to prove that, hey, I do belong here. And I think that's only going to add to his ability to make an impact at some point for Notre Dame.
Brian, let's get back to North Carolina. North Carolina comes into this game with a record of 5-2, and I'll tell you what, actually 6-2, I beg your pardon. And I'll tell you what, the 2 losses combined 6 points. They lost by 3 in Tallahassee. They had no business losing that game. They wound up losing to the Seminoles 31-28, and they lost at Virginia 44-41. This team is 2 plays away from being an 8-0 team. This is not an easy game by any stretch of the imagination for Notre Dame on Friday, and I think that obviously Notre Dame's going to have to be in a track meet to beat North Carolina because North Carolina is going to score some points. I think at the end of the day, Notre Dame is going to be able to win this game, but I don't think it's going to be all by that much. I got Notre Dame winning in an absolute shootout, 45-38.
Yeah, I'd be a little bit surprised if Notre Dame gave up that many points. I think when you look at North Carolina, this is an outstanding offense, but I think Notre Dame's going to be able to really control the clock. I think you're going to see sort of what they did to Louisville, which is don't let their offense get on the field. Put together long, sustained drives, run the football, pound it, take your shots, do ball control, and not let them get on the field. And I think the other thing, too, is if the Notre Dame defense can make a couple stops early and allow the offense to kind of get some distance, and then all of a sudden North Carolina has to kind of get out of their desire to be balanced, I think that's where you could really see Notre Dame pile it on. But I think it'll be a competitive game, but I think it'll be more of like a 34-31, 34-27 kind of game, just because I think Notre Dame's going to do everything they can to try to shorten the length of the game. So the other part of it, too, is, their losses were both close losses, but they weren't losses to good teams. And I think that's kind of the confusing part. I mean, this is also a team that, is a 2-point conversion away from going into overtime at BC. And at that point in time, BC had all the momentum. And I would have liked to see what BC could have done to them in overtime. Phil Jerkovic really just kind of tore them apart in the second half of that game. You talked about a team that at one point in time against Wake Forest was down 45-24. They were losing to Wake Forest. If Notre Dame gets up on them 45-24, they're not coming back. That's going to be a blowout, because Notre Dame's got such a great defense. So I think this is a very good North Carolina team in a lot of ways, but it's not. They're just not quite where Notre Dame is because their defense isn't that good. And so as long as Ian Book plays like he has the last couple games, I think this will be a sound, convincing win for Notre Dame. If Ian Book doesn't play like he has the last couple games, that's when I start getting nervous because I don't think – look, you're not going to hold them to 12 points like you did Louisville, right? I mean, you and I can both agree on barring a monsoon happening in Chapel Hill on Friday, kind of like we saw in NC State in 2016, they're going to score some points. And if the Notre Dame offense isn't ready to go point for point, then that's how I think you could see this team get beat. But even if that happens, I don't see this being a game where North Carolina scores over 40 points, barring overtime.
Brian, before we let you go, let everyone know what's going on at irishbreakdown.com. What are you guys doing on this Thanksgiving week?
Well, we're going to have plenty of analysis, obviously, about the Notre Dame-North Carolina game. I'm going to have a couple articles breaking down aspects of North Carolina that Notre Dame has to most prepare for and defend. And, of course, also the men's and women's basketball teams kick off their seasons this weekend on Friday and Saturday. Women play on Friday, the men play on Saturday. So I'll also have previews for both of those teams coming up this year too. But, just really diving into what are the keys to victory for Notre Dame? What are the parts of the North Carolina football team that Notre Dame has to most be prepared for and stop or exploit, depending on the focus? And then what can Notre Dame do to get better in the red zone? Plan on having a breakdown of that here coming up in the next couple of days as well.
Looking forward to seeing it. Always a pleasure, sir, and we'll talk next Wednesday.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, Ron.
All right, happy Thanksgiving to you and yours.
Same to you all and everybody else out there.
See ya. Brian Driscoll from irishbreakdown.com. This game, I know you can sit back and go, oh, God, North Carolina's a basketball school.
No, they're not.
This is a very good North Carolina team. Not defensively, but offensively, this is a very good North Carolina team.
Even back in the day when like Butch Davis took over there, he kind of turned that culture a little bit to kind of, at least the people in North Carolina understand that there's a little bit of focus on football down there. Since when Mitch Trubisky was down there, they were a pretty decent team. So I think for the last maybe 5 or 6 years, especially in North Carolina, people kind of understand that the culture down there is changing a little bit. It's always going to be a basketball school, but there's a little bit more eyes being drawn towards their football team because of the product they're putting out. And then going and getting Mac Brown, I mean, that's one of the top coaches in all of football. So that's definitely, coaching is important in football. I think it's one of the sports where coaching is most important. So I think when you get a guy like that, it definitely draws some attention to your program.
Well, this is pretty much a must-win for North Carolina if they want to get into the ACC title game. I mean, you take a look at the standings. Notre Dame is 7-0. Clemson is 6-1. The U is 6-1, and here's North Carolina at 6-2. Now, North Carolina has the remaining games on their schedule is Notre Dame. They'll have a non-conference game against West Carolina, and then they're going to play in Miami against the U. So if, let's say, North Carolina won out, you're looking at an 8-2 record. Okay.
Notre Dame would still have to lose again.
And they would have to have the tiebreak. They would have the tiebreaker over the U. So the only way they're going to be able to do this is if Clemson or Notre Dame loses another game. Well, Clemson has 2 games left on their schedule, and I'm sure they're going to reschedule the Florida State game. They have to play Pitt, and they have to play Virginia Tech. Well, Virginia Tech has just gone god-awful, so I don't see Clemson losing another game. So they're going to be out. So then what happens with Notre Dame? Well, Notre Dame, after North Carolina, they've got Syracuse, and they have Wake Forest. Notre Dame's probably not going to lose another game. So there's no chance or very little chance for Notre Dame or for North Carolina to sneak into the top 2, even if they beat Notre Dame. But the only chance, and it's a slight chance, very tiny chance, they have to beat Notre Dame on Friday.
Right.
I don't know if they will or not, but you know.
Friday is always weird because you can always be knocked out of rhythm when you're playing on a Friday, knocked out of routine. It's in North Carolina.
It is in Chapel Hill.
Now, if there's any no one's going to make excuses in Notre Dame at all, but if there's anything that could throw them off their game, maybe a little change in routine on the road, that could be maybe one of those reasons why that turns into a trap game a little bit. And they just got ranked number 2. They're feeling themselves. I would be careful if I was Notre Dame.
This is a tougher game than what people think, and I think that what opened my eyes, because the people in Vegas, you gotta respect them because they're normally right when they put numbers up. This is only a 5-point spread between Notre Dame and North Carolina. And I looked at this and I was like, damn, okay. And then I did some deep dive search on North Carolina. Oh, my God, this offense is incredible.
It's really good.
This is going to be a tough game for Notre Dame. It will be a tough game. I think that if Notre Dame defensively can put the clamps on them early, okay, it could go sideways. But I think this is going to be a track meet. And I think Notre Dame is going to ultimately be forced to play North Carolina's tempo, but they'll have just enough to get it done.
And I get what Brian is saying. This defense is one of the best in the country. You definitely don't expect them to give up a lot of points. But the way the football is played now, eventually even your good defenses are going to get exposed.
Yep.
It's just there's too much to guard. So eventually, I think this could be a game where maybe Notre Dame gives up 28, 35 points in the game just because the way North Carolina is built, they have multiple threats on the outside. Their quarterback's pretty mobile, which tends to give Notre Dame problems anyway. It's a scary game if I was a Notre Dame fan.
If North Carolina had a decent defense, right, we would be looking at this team as a top 4 or top 3
It might
type
turn
of
into
team.
a Big 12 game.
Yeah, I think it will. I definitely will. Listen, I think Notre Dame will score in the 40s, and hope and pray that North Carolina doesn't.
I think North Carolina might have the edge on quarterbacks, though.
Ian Book has played pretty well,
but you've been his biggest critic.
You know what? I'm not going to argue that. I agree somewhat. I'm just going to be real curious to see this game. I'm just glad I'm not working on Running Point on Friday so I can watch this game.
Well, it's at night, right?
Well, I thought it was an afternoon affair.
Usually those Friday games end up at night. When Georgia Tech played Friday, it was a night game. So.
Let me look and do some. Yeah, it's an afternoon affair. 3:30.
You'd be out of here anyway.
Well, yeah, but it's gonna be a great game. I'm looking forward to it. I'm a little nervous. I got to be honest. This game, Notre Dame is going to be in a dogfight this Friday. Excuse me. And see, I'm now even thrown off to the Friday Saturday thing.
That tears it.
Yeah, that's it. All right, we're going to be chatting with Brian Tolnar. We have some golf tips, and this PGA season ended last weekend, and we'll talk with Brian about the 2020 season,
Kind of like
about what he has done with Mill Creek and how late they're going to be open.
fall finale with Brian Tolnar.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And his last tip, which will probably be equipment use and what you
Yeah.
do in the off season. And I'll pay attention because I have a story about breaking a golf club early on in a golf season and why I broke it.
And now we have to kind of work on that pamphlet for me.
And there you go. There you go. Brian Tolnar coming up next. Stick around.
It's storm season.
I think we're under the gun for some heavy storms over the next couple of hours.
And Storm Tracker 21 is ready.
This is probably the one we're keeping a closer eye on.
On air,
And locally, we're going to have a lot of eyes on our area.
online,
All right, let's talk high-risk futurecast and the timing of this weather.
on social media, and on our app.
Rain will come and go tomorrow. There'll be some dry intervals.
Stay ready with Storm Tracker 21.
The severe weather threat now through around sunset this evening.
Hi, I'm Colin Chupa. And I'm Kelsey Clem from K-Squared Marketing. Our boutique marketing firm specializes in media planning and buying, public relations, event marketing strategies, and strategic sponsorships. We can integrate our services with your existing game plan, or we can be your entire marketing team. Your goals, our game plan. Let's win together. Call K-Squared Marketing at 330-623-2730 or visit ksquared.marketing to learn more.
Hi everyone, this is DJ Yoakley with Your Sports Network. We appreciate your support of YSN and welcome you to the YSN family. Our broadcast streams are brought to you live at no cost to you by sponsors that are local to this community. Without the vision and generosity of our sponsors and partners, we would not be able to bring this game to you today. So please support the great businesses and leaders that are making this game possible. And if you're a business in need of great advertising and sponsorship opportunities, feel free to head over to our site for more information on the right fit for you. We are local, we are loyal, and we are live. We are YSN.
Ah, the details. Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods is one fine ride. Perfect cornering, superb handling, sporty and stylish, power to spare, plus awesome mileage. Yeah, jaw-droppingly beautiful lines and well appointed with luxurious trim. Put more oomph in your life and start beholding the molding. Find your home's fine hardwood at BairdBrothers.com.
No matter what the weather, be prepared with a reliable, efficient Rude gas furnace or air conditioner from MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning. Call your energy efficient expert, MP Vivo, today for a free estimate.
Here at MP Vivo, we rely on Rude, and so should you.
Welcome back to a Wednesday edition of Running Point on YSNLive.com, presented by Greenwood Chevrolet on Mahoning Avenue in Austintown. Ron Potesta with you alongside me. Georgia's number... No, he's not.
Careful. Careful.
Georgia Tech's #1 fan. He was giving me the finger wag. I'm not going to piss off Anthony Hartwig. No, sir, not me. All right, golf season is coming to a close as we prepare for the 4-letter S word that I just despise more than anything. And to talk about golf and to talk about the 2020 PGA season that was, we bring in from Mill Creek our very own Brian Tolnar. Brian, how are you today, sir?
We are doing well, getting ready for our big Black Friday sale here on Friday and heading into 12 days of Christmas in December. Knocking on the door with all these holidays, although we still have some golfers out there. But believe it or not, it's raining a little bit, and we'd have a few groups on the golf course today.
Brian, I got to ask you, Black Friday, much like all the department stores and all of the other places that realize that this is the first official shopping day before the holidays, before Hanukkah, Christmas, and whatnot. What kind of deals are you guys going to have at the Mill Creek Golf Shop?
I'll tell you what, we have a litany of stuff going on. Whether it be buying gift cards for next season or just coming in and shopping. You name it. We've got our Mill Creek headwears, buy one get one. Under Armour 60% off. Adidas 50% off. Nancy Lopez, if you've got the special lady golfer in your life, buy one get one free. So you can double down and get her 2 shirts or maybe a shirt and a jacket. Antigua 30% off. Puma 50% off. Some strong clothing brands called Donald Ross at 40% off. FootJoy outerwear at 40%. Socks, buy one, get one. Double dozen packs from Precept, $19.99. Lynx and King drinkware, 25% off. Tempercraft, $20 off. C4 logo belts. You name it, between that, anything logoed in the golf shop. We also have Youngstown State T-shirts, buy one, get one. Youngstown State headwear, buy one, get one free. And then Youngstown State polos and fleeces, 30% off. From poker chips to Bridgestone and Callaway headwear at $12 and $15.99. We've got every golfer in the Mahoning Valley covered on whatever it is that they're looking for under the sun. Like I said, in addition, we have Mill Creek gift cards starting on Friday. If you purchase any gift card between Good Friday and the 23rd, which will be our big sale and our big blowout at the end of the year where we shut down for the season, you also receive a free bag tag for your golf bag with any purchase of a gift card between Friday and the 23rd. So, one of the nice things about the point-of-sale system that we put in here at the Metro Parks this spring, any of the gift cards that you purchase are good for rounds of golf at the golf course, merchandise, golf lessons, golf programming, practice range. Excuse me. In addition, Wick Recreation Area, the par 3, the batting cages, sports rentals, recreation programs, and if and when they ever become open without the COVID stipulations, the Glacier and Newport boathouses, where you can use a gift card for boat rentals, boat rack rentals for the season, boating programs, and boathouse snacks. So, we've got you covered. If you want to give the gift of the Metro Parks, we have a number of areas here in our department, whether it's golf or recreation, that these gift cards are good for. Kids that play in the par 3 league will get a gift card that covers their season, and it's a great gift for mom and dad. It's a great gift for any of the family members who play golf. So we're excited to share that with everybody, and it's nice to be able to use that across the park as opposed to just at the golf course.
Brian, I know we usually ask you your Power 5 for the golf week. The golf season wrapped up. So how about your personal Power 5 products that you like in your pro shop?
Personal Power 5 of what we've got left. I would say, Donald Ross shirts, they're a very upper end line. They're 40% off. You're going to get probably no better deal than that. That would be number one. Number two is the FootJoy outerwear. That's 40% off. Outerwear can run you anywhere between $79 and $150. So having that at 40% off is a great deal. So that would be number two. Big fan of Youngstown State, so anything Youngstown State logoed, it does really well here. Having the T-shirts at buy one, get one, and the headwear at buy one, get one. We've got some spectacular double logo with the Y on the front, the penguin on the side. That would probably be number three. Big fan of something new, C4 Belts, the logo belt company where we have our Mill Creek logo and the tree logo on it. That would be number four. And then I'm going to go with Ouray hoodies and fleeces. Just a great piece to wear during the winter, a hoodie, when you're going out to dinner on Friday night, or you're catching a high school football or basketball game, and just a great warm piece. That would be my five to round out, and my one sleeper would probably be Under Armour. I don't know where you can get Under Armour at 60% off, logoed with our Mill Creek logo. I think it's a great buy.
Brian Tolnar, our guest over at Mill Creek. And Brian, talk a little bit about Mill Creek. The 36-hole golf course, you've shut down, what was it, the South course you have shut down?
Yes, the South course closed up midweek this week. We took our tee markers out. But, however, with the nice new cart pass that we have out, we did open it up to walking, hiking, and biking for the winter. So some of the things that people got to enjoy in the spring, now you get to come back in the fall now that we have our pass in on that side. So it's going to be a nice way to get out and take advantage of the property here and some of the beauty and splendor of the golf course. In addition, when the main golf course on the north closes, that'll be it for the season. We're going to try to keep that open as long as we can, and then usher in some walking, hiking, and biking on there as well before we get our winter activities of cross-country skiing and snowshoeing, which a lot of people seem to enjoy, and we have a lot of traffic for that. So, we try to make it a 12-season operation, and with some of the things that we have upcoming, it will be for golf at some point too. But we're excited to to be able to share this facility with the community, and we can't thank them enough for everything that they do for Metro Parks and supporting us.
Well, there's a trail that is right next to the golf course. If you go on 224, and I believe it is headed east toward Poland. If you're on 224 going east, it is just before you get to the golf course. If you're headed toward Canfield, that trail, it's beautiful as well. But it's nice to have options. So if the trail happens to be filled with people and that parking lot is filled, then you can simply go over to the golf course and walk the golf cart on the 18-hole South course.
It is. It's a nice mix-up to be able to switch it up a little bit. They put in the overflow parking lot for the East Golf Trail that comes in just short of our entrance as you enter in on 224 on the right-hand side. That parking lot, historically, when I was a kid, I remember our school buses parking for high school golf matches. There was a lot of potholes. It was gravel. Now it's very nice asphalt. They really reconditioned and put in some parking spaces there to really take up some of the overflow issues that we have off of 224 and off of Shields Road down at the other end. So it's a nice alternative. They've got a nice bridge, a nice gate that's over there, and hopefully soon they'll have a nice restroom facility that's going to be tied in there too as well. One of the things that we found with COVID, in the spring when we weren't open for those 2 months of March and April, where a lot of folks were looking for places to walk. And one of the things that we did was we opened up both the north and the south to walk. As long as you stayed on the path, our guys could maintain the golf course. And what we were finding is 200 to 300 people were coming out, throughout the course of the spring and taking advantage of that. And, some of the things with reopening the south course up for walking, hiking, and biking this time of year, it's really, gave some people some opportunity to, number one, see some of the improvements that we've made over the course of the year with the cart path. And it just gives them a different look at, looking at nature as a whole. So it's nice to be able to tie in the golfer and the non-golfer with giving them options to have some recreational opportunities. And, just like you said, that, the walkway between Shields Road, East Golf Hike and Bike Trail is nice until you get a bunch of people on it, and then you want to mix it up a little bit. The golf course is a great option and a great alternative to that.
And you mentioned how opening that up kind of came out because, COVID, people were looking for places to walk. Is there anything else about Mill Creek, going through COVID that you think will make it better going forward in a normal kind of setting? That now that we've gotten through the golf season of COVID at least?
Well, I think, as the state and the CDC and the governor's office came out with regulations for each sport, each recreational opportunity, we kind of kept everything closed until they came out with a strict guideline to everything. We did that with golf, and that was one of the reasons we were closed for the 2-month period. When that came open, we put our guidelines in to match what they were looking for from a state regulation. Same thing with, tennis, and same thing with basketball, and, opening the batting cages when it was time to do so, and the par 3 course, and the volleyball courts, the hockey. I mean, there's a ton of alternatives. We just had to wait until each set of guidelines were laid out by the governor's office or the CDC. So I think with that, it brought in a number of people, like it did with golf this year. If you were to tell me in April or May, would you make the financial goal by the end of the year, I would have been happy with about 70 or 75% the goal. And, one of the things that we found, with COVID, it's brought a lot more people to the park, the traffic at the park, not only from golf and recreation standpoint, but, the way our police tracks people and sees people in the park has been through the roof. So probably the most traffic we've had in the park in the last probably 25 years or so was this year. So people got to enjoy nature a little bit more. And any time that you bring people in that haven't been here for 10 or 15 years, like to the golf course, they tend to, pick up something that they liked and maybe had a family and stop playing for a little bit. Now they're bringing the family out to play. So, I mean, if we get those folks, next year and the year after for 4 or 5 times a year, we're already ahead of the curve with where we're headed from a golf perspective. And I think that that's really going to translate everywhere else in the park too, whether it be a baseball league or a adult hockey league or a junior league at the par 3. And, whenever we get the boat houses open, obviously that was one of the things that they wouldn't allow us to open up with the regulations that are out there because there's no set regulations yet. But I think if and when that those open, I think there's going to be a lot of popularity of getting on the water again and having the concert series down at Morley, which was another one that was just, we couldn't do because it brings large groups of people. But I think as a whole, people in our community and people, outside a 30-mile radius have tended to gravitate to the park, and that's one of the things that opened our eyes as a recreation department of getting more people involved if and when we can do that, when the time is right. So, we obviously made our goal at the end of the year financially, and that was a lot to do with the golf end, overperformed, which was great, and it's something we were always working towards. But I think capturing those people next year and the year after, I think is going to be vitally important. But I think bringing people in as a whole, getting more people that haven't been to the park in many, many years or discovered certain areas in the park, whether it be recreation or just hiking and enjoying some out time, space because it's fun and it's safe and it's it's a good place to hang out, I think is going to be huge for us and really pay dividends down the road. So I think there's obviously a downside with COVID, and it's here and it's probably going to be here to stay for another year or two. But I think when everything comes to fruition and more opportunities open up, I think we're going to be a huge benefactor, for that.
And Brian, obviously, advertising and getting some deals or getting a catalog or something together with a Chamber of Commerce is important as well. And I've been saying this for years, ever since I came back to the community and I moved back home. I want to say 8 or 9 years ago, and I've been saying it since I moved back home. It's amazing to me that this area, nestled in between two major metropolitan cities of Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and the travel to either city is within a driving distance, and with the food that we have here, it is amazing to me that a Fortune 500 company or two or three has not invested in the Mahoning Valley. And it's not just the park. It's much more than Mill Creek Park, although that's gorgeous in and of itself. It's just amazing to me that this area, as beautiful as it is, as cost-effective as it is in terms of how much you can get for your dollar, both real estate-wise and otherwise, it's amazing to me that a Fortune 500 company has not set up root in Youngstown and in the Mahoning Valley, because I think that this area is absolutely positively ready to explode.
I 100% agree with you, and that's one of the things that I had the opportunity to spend about 12 years up in Rochester, New York, in a community that's thriving. And if any industry goes down, Kodak is perfect example of that. It went down. They changed to online film and print. And, it's a big transition for what they were when they started, but they've always been able to adapt, adjust, and evolve. And I think for whatever reason, we haven't got over that hump yet down here, but I think that there's no better time than right now with the opportunity. The cost of living is very inexpensive here. And, if you had the opportunity to live at other areas, you don't realize that until you move away and then you move back, how very inexpensive it is. The food here is exceptional. The parks here are exceptional. Not only Mill Creek, but the surrounding parks as well. Shopping, dining, anything that you can think about, anything that you want to do, whether it's sports, going to a Youngstown State game, going to a Scrappers game, going to a hockey game down at Cavelli. I mean, there's a ton of things to do here, and I think that people are starting to open their eyes. Whether it be the stay and play packages that we have, but if you're in a hour or 90 minutes away from Erie, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Akron, Canton, I think we're going to have a huge draw, knowing that people are more apt to take day trips now than maybe doing a weekend, or maybe spending a 3-day weekend coming from Michigan, coming from Rochester, coming from Buffalo, and so on. There's so much to do here, and for a very expensive dollar for the weekend, that I think we're going to be a huge benefactor when the battery plant opens, when the Amazon opens. And I think if we could get more of those things and get more of those things located in Youngstown, it's only going to make everybody thrive, here in the Mahoning Valley. And for me, it's great to be part of that, and it's great to be a part of what we've been able to accomplish here in a short period of time at Mill Creek with our capital improvement plan and everything that we've done to really get the conditions to be where they're supposed to be, and make golfing fun and make recreation fun in the Mahoning Valley. That I think it's just going to bring and drive in more people. So, it's an exciting time to be here. There's no doubt about it. But I'm 100% for what you say. We are primed and ready for industry to come here, and I think it's going to be knocking on the door in the short term.
Now all we need is a tropical climate, so we don't have to deal with that S word that's coming around the bend.
Absolutely, but if they stay to the point where we don't get snow until late December, January, and February, and we have a March like we had last year where it was like 70 and 80 degrees, and we open the first week of March, I'm all for it. 2.5 months, that's fine. That's a nice little break for us to hit and go full stride coming out of the gates in March. But I'm right there with you. There's something to be said about seeing the sun on a daily basis that makes you want to go out of the house and makes you want to be active. There's no doubt about it.
Brian Tolnar, our guest, Brian over at Mill Creek. Okay, the 2021 golf season. I mean, it's actually underway with a couple of events that are pertaining to the FedEx Cup standings, which I think is weird, but neither here nor there. Jason Kokrak is in the top 5 right now, albeit distantly behind number 1 Dustin Johnson. He has a 252-point lead over Bryson DeChambeau. Kokrak in 5th place, 354 points back. It's amazing what the Masters Championship can do for you.
Yep.
But obviously, the last couple of events for Jason, not exactly the best for him. Failed to meet the cut the last 2 tournaments. We'll have a couple of months off before restarting the 2021 campaign. They'll be in Hawaii before we know it. What do you do between now and January if you're a professional golfer? Are you on the golf course, or are you taking some time off?
Well, I think, from Jason's perspective, number one, you find a place to play during the off season, and I think he'll take advantage of that. First and foremost, number one, enjoy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the opportunity to come home and see your family and, maybe spend a week at home. Go down south, go out west, get a couple rounds in for a couple weeks, come home, enjoy the Christmas holidays, and then as soon as Christmas is over, before New Year starts, that's when you start putting in some hard work, knowing that he's going to go to the Tournament of Champions this year in Hawaii. He's going to probably participate in the Sony Open the following week after that, before they hit the West Coast swing in California and then hit Arizona and so on down the line. So I think, number one, he's in great position. Obviously being in the top 5 and the top 10 in the FedEx Cup before you hit a tee shot, coming out of the gate next year, I think that's, super important. Yeah, Dustin Johnson is up there, but you gain a lot of points winning the Masters and winning a major or a WGC event, so you're always going to be elevated. But I think, a lot of times, the Dustin Johnsons, the Phil Mickelsons, the Tiger Woods will skip the first 2 events out in Hawaii. So you can make up some ground pretty quick by having some strong finishes or getting a win under your belt in one of those 2 events before the players start coming back in either the beginning of or middle of January or the beginning of February, playing at Torrey Pines, playing at Pebble Beach, and playing the Bob Hope Desert Classic and the event at Arizona. So I think, if he practices well and goes at it hard after Christmas, spend some time enjoying the home time at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then get after it hard in the early going. Now, he does have a lot of great history on the West Coast. He almost won the event at Riviera a couple years back, so he's played well there. He knows what has to be done at the I think it's the Northern Trust. They change sponsors so many times out there. It's hard to keep up, but it's the event at Riviera. I think he'll be successful there. So I think he could get off to a hot start right out of the gate. As for the off season, number one, you always want to make sure that you keep your flexibility, and there's certain things that you want to do. But I think from a player's perspective, you want some reps, you want some practice time, you want to key in on some areas that you felt that you were deficient the year before, whether it be chipping or whether it be long iron play. I think you spend some time, with your instructor and you get those things tightened up before you head out to Hawaii and play in the wind and go play in California. So I think Jason in particular is in great shape with where he's at, with where he's headed, and he's got a good foundation built for the rest of the season, albeit the wraparound season. Nothing like a PGA Tour season that starts in the middle of the year and wraps around the other year. But, I mean, when you're playing at Augusta in November, I guess it's par for the course.
I think I'm going to take a couple weeks off and then book a trip to Hawaii. I think that sounds like a good plan.
Oh, that would be awesome. Absolutely awesome. If you can do it, and obviously being able to play in the Tournament of Champions out there is a big deal. It's a limited field event, and I think that there's a good chance that you're going to gain a lot of points for the FedEx Cup. Again, you get to take the opportunity to bring your family over there. A lot of those players will spend at least 2 weeks, sometimes 3, over there playing a week vacation and 2 weeks playing a tournament. But I think it's a great thing for Jason and his family, and to be able to do that over there, I think would be special before coming back to hit some of those events in California.
Need to freshen up on my Hawaiian language. I know aloha and ohana. That's about it.
That's about it for me, too. Although it does look pretty there. I've seen it on TV every year for my entire life.
Brian, take everyone through what would be a normal week for a PGA golfer. And I mean, look, there's so many golfers that we talk about that are always seem to be top 15, top 20, and they're going to make a crud load of money now that golfers are paid an insane amount of money thanks to Tiger Woods. But what about the golfers that aren't always a sure thing after cut down day on Friday? Take us through like a top 200 or a top 300 type of golfer that's on the tour that doesn't win a whole lot, and every once in a while they'll get a really high finish, but they also find themselves cut after Friday. It's tough because you're not. This is on your dime. You're not playing for a team per se. This is all on your dime.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the sports that's more individual than anything. I mean, you take the collegiate aspect and the high school aspect out of it, where you're playing as a team. Once you go to that next level and you play, whether it's semi-pro or you're playing, full on the PGA Tour or the Web.com or the LPGA Tour, there's nobody that's going to dictate your paycheck other than you and how well you play. And if you play poorly, you're just not getting paid, so you have a lot of expense in there. So, as the game of golf has grown and the Tiger factor, jumped in there in 1996 or 1997, I think, sponsorships are vital. The money that these players make before they tee it up. I mean, you look at, Tiger and Phil and Arnold Palmer and all those guys were an exception to the rule because those guys make about $80 million before they hit one tee shot. And if they have a great year, they make $10 million in a year. So they make, 8 times as much, before they tee it off. But as you get into that 150 to 300 in the rankings, you're scraping for every dollar. Every dollar means more because you still have the travel expenses. You still have to fly to events. You still have to drive to events. Got to rent a car. Got to rent a hotel. Got to rent a car while you're there during the week. You're eating like everybody else would, so you're paying to dine out. It's not the easiest life. A lot of the guys will say you live like gypsies, and if you think of a normal PGA Tour week, the caddy gets there on Monday. You're paying a caddy on top of that for the entire week. They get there on Monday. They do the yardage charting. You fly in on Tuesday. You may get a range session or a practice round in. Wednesday, you're playing in the Pro-Am. Thursday, Friday, you better bring it to the table, otherwise you're not making the cut. And then if you make the cut, you're playing Saturday and Sunday, and you're flying out Sunday night or Monday morning. Whether you fly back home for a day if you have family, or you're out for 2 weeks and fly to the next event, you're continuously traveling. You know exactly what it's like to travel when you go to vacation. These guys are doing it on a weekly basis, and sometimes they're staying out there. When FedEx Cup playoff starts and majors, you're out there for 3 and 4 weeks. So it's a long time on the road. And any time that you're on the road, you're eating out. You're limited on where you can exercise. You're limited on where you can hit balls and practice and play. So, and you get some jet lag too. So, any time that you travel, it wears you out and you get tired. So you got to be cognizant of that to rest and make sure that you're 100% ready when the chips are down on the table. So, knowing that that's the way that you go every single week, it's very important to make the cut. And I think that 200 to 250 range, guys make a lot of cuts, but they don't finish high. But, making a paycheck and making the cut is a big difference in them playing another event or another 2 or 3 events down the road. So it's vitally important to them. And once you get beyond that 300, it gets a lot tougher.
You talked about sponsorship in terms of what they can bring to the table. I mean, this our business, YSN. I've DJ and I've had this conversation. If we had a relationship with someone who breaks into the professional golfing scene, this is obviously something that we'd love to have a YSN but put on a person's bag or a polo shirt that they would wear or something of that nature. Give everyone an idea of what it would cost for a business to sponsor a golfer. My God, that's crazy.
Let me just answer that, Ron, with if you have to ask, you can't afford it.
Well, I can give you some pretty good insight, and the only reason I can give you some pretty good insight is the guy that's the president of United Rentals, national rental company, was a member of mine up in Rochester, New York. I get to be extremely good friends with him. They sponsor NCAA, Major League Baseball, NASCAR, cars, events, you name it, they sponsor it. They sponsor 8 guys on the PGA Tour. Bronson Burgoon's one of them. Ryan Palmer's another one. And that's where I got to be good friends with Ryan Palmer, was the link that I have with him. Now, from a player's perspective, it's where you are in your rank because it's based on how many hits that your logo gets on television. So the Tiger Woods, the Phil Mickelson, where the cameras are always on them, they're going to get the most hits. So as you get the most hits, like the top 10 have a value. That's like an upper tier number. The top 30 have a value. That's worth X amount of dollars. The top 50, the 100, all the way down to 300, and then you go into the web.com stuff. But just for an example, Ryan Palmer's bag alone is a $750,000 contract, and he's a top 30 player. That's just his bag for the United Rentals bag. The side of his headwear is worth X, Y, and Z. The front of his headwear is worth X, Y, and Z. The collar on the shirts has another value to it. And there's values based on player and how many hits to television that they get. So, I mean, just that is an example. I mean, what Brian wears it on the collar. He wears it on the side of the hat. His caddy wears it on the front of his hat. Ryan carries it on the bag. So, I mean, that's just one player. Bronson Burgoon's another one. They had the side of Natalie Golbus's headwear at one time when she was playing with TaylorMade. They had United Rentals on the side, and that was another 6-digit contract, based on her reputation on the LPGA Tour, being most followed, a lot of camera time. So I think it's from a player's perspective. I mean, you look at Tiger Woods, for example, or Phil Mickelson. They're making 80-some million before they tee it up. And if you break it down, their hat's worth X, Y, and Z. The collar's worth X, Y, and Z. Their bag's, probably triple what Ryan Palmer's is, with the Gatorade bag or the AT&T bag or, I mean, you name it. So, I mean, there's monster money out there. No different than the web.com or the LPGA, but the price values are a little bit less because it all comes down to camera time and hits on television. So, I mean, there's a lot of money to be made, and that's why I think you see a lot of guys with right and left arm stamps, collar stamps, the headwear stamps, the side of the headwear, the caddy's wearing a shirt or a hat that has the logo, or using a towel that has a logo on it, because it's all worth value. They're trying to get on television to advertise their product in a forum that's favorable to their customer base. Reynolds can basically go to everything: the NCAA, Major League Baseball, the NBA, you name it, because everybody's renting something. So they're a perfect example of a company that has a division for national advertisement and marketing, and it's based on athletes and athletics.
Yeah, and when you look at it, it's crazy, and that's why when I laugh when I see a commercial that's like trying to be funny but it misses. It's like, that's a really big investment that you just swung and missed on.
You know what? They not only is an investment for the players, and you pay a number, a dollar value on say a top 30 or top 10 player. That doesn't guarantee that player's going to have a good year. So, I mean, you could hit or miss very easily on, that player may have changed irons and he tanked it for 2 years. So, I mean, he wasted a lot of money by not getting any exposure. But on the same token, with, these sponsorships comes some access to the player. Excuse me. So, I mean, if you have, I know Ryan Palmer, for example, 2 events on the PGA Tour, he does some entertainment, or he does a clinic, or he flies out to do a golf outing. And that's basically everybody's sponsorship has that, to where the company can get close to the player and learn about him and spend some time with them, or bring them into a year-end sales meeting to speak and give autographs and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that player can do, or be on posters, or be on cutouts, all over the place, for businesses and stuff. So, I mean, there is some growth to that, but, you're banking a lot on the player's going to have a pretty good year too.
It's an amazing career if you're good enough to be a pro golfer, but just like any other sport, to be on the top stage, you got to be really, really, really good.
It is, and you do. And I mean, if you look at now, for an example, the top 3 golfers right now on the PGA Tour, number 1 Tiger Woods, number 2 Phil Mickelson, and number 3 is not even living. It's Arnold Palmer. He's making over $80 million a year, and he's not alive. And that's it's amazing how well and how long-lived his career and his legacy with the game of golf, because he's making the same amount, basically about the same amount of money as Tiger Woods and Phil, and he's not even teeing up a ball. I mean, it is amazing. But, I mean, Arnold Palmer's Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus is Jack Nicklaus. What they've done for the game of golf to put it where it's at, they deserve every penny of it, and Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson rightfully so, because they've really carried the PGA Tour on their shoulders. I mean, Arnold Palmer brought television to the game of golf. So, I mean, albeit, and his career in advertising has been unbelievable with the Arnold Palmer iced tea and Pennzoil, and I mean, you name it. He's got airports named after him, and roads and cities and all kinds of other stuff. So, I mean, it's been great for the game, but there's plenty of money out there to be made if you market yourself properly and you do the right things.
Brian Tolnar, our guest. Okay, it's time for the last tip of the week, and I got to believe that this is going to be maintenance in terms of your golf clubs. Am I correct, sir?
It is maintenance of your body, maintenance of your golf clubs. So number one, your equipment. We want to make sure that your equipment makes it through the winter. So the first thing that you want to do is, number one, clean your equipment. Make sure it's nice and clean. Number 2, scrub down the grips if you haven't already. If the grips are worn, now's a great time to get some new grips put on. So if you have clubs that are beaten up a little bit and need the grips, you played a lot of rounds this year because of COVID. I'm looking at some of the players that come out here and play, and they say, normally I play about 60 rounds. I played 125 times this year. So my grips are worn. Usually about 40 rounds of golf, your grips are worn and ready for some new ones. So number one, putting some new grips on those clubs if you're going to keep those clubs in the bag for the next year. Probably the most important, besides cleaning them and putting them away for the year, is where you put them away for the year. You want to make sure that they're in a warm space, not very cold. They're not left in your trunk. The reason we don't leave them in your trunk when there's a lot of high heat and a lot of coldness outside is because the epoxy in your clubs has the tendency to break down anytime that it gets super hot in your trunk and anytime that it gets super cold in your trunk. So, leaving those clubs in the car is not a good idea. Leaving them in the garage is not a good idea either, because that's going to be the same type of elements of leaving it in your car. So I want to make sure that you bring those in the house. Put them in the basement, put them in the closet, keep them somewhere that's basically room temperature is most important. Golf balls, the same thing. If you have a couple extra dozen of golf balls in your car, bring those in as well. They don't age well when they're out in the cold. They're made to be hit when it's warm, and the characteristics of the golf balls are very important to keep those in check. They will last a long time if you leave them inside. So we want to make sure that you don't leave those outside in your car or in the garage. So that's probably the most important things that you want to do. Number 2, check equipment, check technology. Now's the time to get fitted if you can get fitted indoors anywhere. Looking at the clubs coming out in December, January, February as you prepare for the season. Unload those clubs. The quicker you unload them, they're like a computer, they're like a car. They're old as soon as you get them. They've come out with 7 new different models. So, I mean, now's the time to get rid of them or unload them at the end of the year. But if you're staying with them, you like the equipment that you have, make sure they're brought indoors. They're all cleaned up, ready to go for next season. That way the shafts won't break down. If you have graphite, outdoors, in the winter will make the shafts get a little bit weaker. So if you have stiff shafts and you leave them out in the garage all winter, they may be flexing at regular by the time the season starts. So it's very important to bring those in.
Yeah, let me stop you right there, because I have a story that goes along with what you're saying, Brian. So I left my clubs years ago. I left my clubs in the trunk, and it was a very cold winter. So we decided to go golfing in late March. It was a beautiful day, And first hole, I take my 3-wood or 5-wood. I'm not sure which one. I take it out, and I'm on the tee because I can't hit a driver very well. So I'm on my tee, and I think it was a 5-wood. I'm on my tee, and I hit the ball. And I hit this thing really good. The problem is the ball went one way, the head of the 5-wood went the other way, and I'm stuck with the shaft of the 5-wood, and I'm like, what the hell just happened? And they looked at me and they said, did you leave your clubs out in the trunk in the wintertime? And I'm like, yeah. And they go, that's what happened.
Exactly. Perfect example of the epoxy breaking down. It'll break down in either super cold temperatures or extreme heat will have a tendency to break down. So one or the other, having it been warm during the summer and cold during the winter, you're changing the characteristics of that epoxy in that shaft. So that's exactly what happened there. And that's one of the things that we try to prevent, knowing that golf clubs are a huge investment and buying the right ones, whether it be shaft or club heads or, a name brand, you want to make sure that you keep those and the longevity is there. And that's one of the reasons why we bring it in for that example, spot on.
Alrighty. Now, what about the as the golfer? We've talked about the equipment, and obviously, everyone bring your stuff in, or if it's all old and worn down, get rid of it and buy a new set of clubs. But what about the person, the golfer? What do we do to take care of ourselves in the wintertime?
Golfers, it's pretty simple. We want to make sure that we are in shape for the next season, and the good news is that we're knocking on December's door, so we're only going to be down for maybe 2 months, if that. So hopefully we get to play through December and put the clubs away maybe in January, maybe in February, and we're back out in March. We want to make sure that our body is ready to play as we get out of the gate. So number one, two things that I work on. Number one, endurance, and number two is flexibility. To keep your endurance, you want to keep your legs and your lower body in shape. I tell everybody from your kneecaps to your belly button, that's where you gain all your power in the golf swing. It's that midsection, the mid part of your torso. So we want to keep that in shape. Usually what happens early on in the spring, you play 9 holes, and you sort of crawl in an 18-hole round a week or two down the road. You wake up the next morning, you're very sore. You're not used to, your legs being that sore. You're not used to walking on soft ground. One of the best things to eliminate that is make sure that you spend some time either walking, hiking, or on a treadmill. Even if it's cold, we want to make sure that you hit the treadmill during the winter. We want to keep your legs in good shape. We want to keep your feet and your ankles in good shape. We want those to be solid as we come out. So anything cardio is excellent. If you indoor swim during the winter, that's probably the best thing that you can do because you're using every muscle in your body and you're keeping your flexibility and you're keeping your body in ranges of motion, in motion. So I think walking is important. I think, running on a treadmill, walking on a treadmill, I'm in for lifting weights, but nothing too heavy. We don't want to build a lot of mass that restricts our flexibility in the spring. We want to make sure that anything that we do from a lifting experience is very lightweight. That could be hand weights, walking on a treadmill to keep your arms in check as well as your legs. But lower body, knees, making sure that everything is functioning as we come out of the gate. That's the number one thing that you can do. Number two, flexibility. Being a good golfer and a good golfer from a longevity standpoint is your range of flexibility. Anything that you can do from a exercise standpoint that works flexibility with your arms, your legs, your hips, shoulders, keeping your rotator cuffs in good shape, keeping them flexible. I'm really big on the bands that you can practice with, the flexing bands, whether they're tight or whether they're soft. Stretching your legs out, stretching your arms out. Basically, reworking the golf swing with some bands. Putting one band under your foot, making a golf swing with your arms with the stretch bands, I think are huge. And I think any time that you can do that, you maintain your flexibility during the off season. So when you come out of the gate, not only are you stronger, but you're not losing any flexibility. As the body ages, year in and year out, anytime that you get north of 40, you start losing flexibility each and every single year. So, staying with some flexibility, I think, is huge. To maintain your strength and your endurance of your lower body, but I think flexibility is king. It will allow you to golf in your 70s and 80s. And by having that flexibility, as long as we can remain flexible, that's as long as you're going to be able to play golf. So I think those two things are vitally important, not only to the golf swing, but to the stamina coming right out of the gate in the spring.
Brian, let me ask you, and I'll throw my name out there because I'm not flexible at all. I've not taken care of my body in any way, shape, or form, and I'm 56, and I want to get back into shape. Now, I've finally achieved one small goal, and that's gotten under 230 pounds, and I'm hoping to go to at 200 or 190 would be the perfect size for me, but neither here nor there. How do I improve my flexibility, which I've never done flexibility exercises? For someone who is an absolute beginner in that, what would you recommend for flexibility exercises?
I would recommend they make stretch bands, number one. Any of the stuff that you find for like rehab, you can find them online, you can find them on Amazon. They do make a golf-specific stretch band. We have them. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but they have handles on both ends. You can put them under your feet. You can hold on to them to your arms. They come with probably about 20 different exercises that you can do. If you don't go the stretch band route, it's almost one of those things where you can sit on the floor, you can stretch your legs out as wide as you can, and you're working on your torso, stretching towards your toes. If you can get there, that's fine. The more and more that you stretch, the more and more loose and limber that you're going to be. The wider you can stretch your legs through this course. I mean, you're not going to do it on day one. It may take you 2, 3, 4 weeks to do it. It may take you 2 months to do it, but just a little bit. If you can gain another inch every month or month and a half, or 2 inches every month or month and a half, you're going to make huge strides. Because again, we want to build up anywhere from our kneecaps to our belly button. And number one, keeping the core nice and lean. If we can do that, it's very hard. Trust me, because I like to eat with the best of them. But I mean, keeping the core, in good shape is only going to help you with your flexibility. It's going to allow your hips to turn and rotate in your golf swing a little bit more. And think of this, for every inch that you can move your hips back, you're probably going to gain another 10 yards or so. So I think, more hip turn, the more that you can hit it with your torso as opposed to your hands or your arms or your small muscles, you're going to have a big advantage coming out of the gate. But stretching, any stretching exercises that you can do, whether it be for your upper body, whether it be for your lower body, but most importantly, your core, are vitally important to your golf game and the longevity of your golf game. So we want to make sure that we're very flexible. So, just stretching, striding your legs out. It could be, standing on steps and stretching your Achilles out. A lot of people do that on the back of the golf cart before they tee off, making sure that their calves and their ankles and their Achilles are in good shape. That's a great start as well at home, where you can press your top of your foot up to the steps and press down to where it feels like you're not going to, obviously pull your Achilles, but give you some flexibility. Building the ankles up, I think, are huge. And it's one of the reasons why a hockey player makes a great golfer, because they have lower body stability and their ankles are very strong. So I think, as a golfer, continues to maintain his or her flexibility, the ankles have to be nice and loose and limber too, but you want them to be strengthened up and as flexible as possible.
I like that you brought up weightlifting, because ever since Tiger Woods came on the scene, you see more and more golfers, in the cream of the crop, come out with the lean look, super muscular like Tiger.
Yep.
When you look at weightlifting and kind of building up that muscular tone, is that something that the top golfers can do because they're well gifted enough that they can sacrifice a couple of things as far as their technique? Or is that something that the average golfer should try to stay away from? Or is there a line that any golfer can kind of go as to how lean they can make their body?
My personal opinion, and this is coming from me, and obviously I'm not a doctor or a strength coach or anything, from a golfer's perspective, you want to be never more than 100 pounds. You want to keep it very light. You don't want to build too much mass in the upper body. I mean, you go back and you look at Tiger before he came out on the PGA Tour, very lean, hit the ball 9 miles. He gained some mass. He lost a little bit of length. He doesn't hit it quite as far as he did because you're restricted with your upper body. Gary Woodland's another one of those. Bryson DeChambeau, obviously he's killing the ball and it's obviously going all over the place, but he's the ultimate change for that role. I mean, he really goes at it hard. He's drinking like 9 or 11 protein shakes a day. I don't think you need to go that strenuous, but anything that you're gonna stay flexible and you're not going to do any damage to your golf muscles, I think are huge. You look at Tiger, for example. He's had a lot of hip problems. He's had a lot of knee problems. He's had some ankle problems, and certainly he's had his share of back problems. And I think a lot of that had to do with going at those weights too hard or doing the marine workouts way too hard. I mean, look at what Jack Nicklaus did and Arnold Palmer did back in their heyday, and they lived to play golf into their 80s with very few injuries or very few layoffs due to back issues or hip issues or knee injuries. So I think that has a lot to be said as well. So I think you don't want to go too heavy at it. I think you can go just enough at it with some of the light stuff, but I think being leaner and flexible are equally as good as being buff up top, because you're going to eliminate your shoulder mass being too big. You're going to eliminate that being able to rotate back too far or being very flexible for what really matters.
Brian, this has been all kinds of fun this year, and we cannot thank you enough for coming on the show every Wednesday at 1 o'clock, providing us some PGA insight, providing us some insight into Mill Creek, not just the golf course, but the park in general. This has been an awful lot of fun. We certainly look forward to doing this again next year.
Absolutely. Like I said before, I love to talk about golf, especially here in the Mahoning Valley. Mill Creek being a special place, obviously working here, and everything that can happen between recreational opportunities and golfing opportunities, I think it's been spectacular. Showing off the game of golf is why I enjoy doing it, and we can't thank you guys enough at YSN for the partnership this year. We really look forward to it next year. It's been fun, and I look forward to doing something possibly in the off season, maybe putting this book together and putting something together in a partnership, and hey, maybe stamping the YSN on the bag going forward.
I like that.
Honestly, I'm digging the fact that we can put a book together and chronological order and just giving the golfers a little bit of an education and have it small enough to where they can have it with them when they're playing around a golf.
Yep, I mean the whole deal's been to keep it simple, stick to the basics, and I think we've done that throughout the course of the year, and it's been eye-opening for me on this end to share some of the knowledge that I've learned over 20 plus years of being a PGA member and getting people out to the game. We love growing the game, and anything that I can do and getting new people knocking at the door is what it's all about.
Hey, enjoy your Thanksgiving. We look forward to speaking with you very, very soon. And let's be honest, I got a Christmas shop for my dad. So he's 87 and he'll be golfing again next year. So I gotta get him something for Christmas. So I'll be over there spending some money on some of the great deals you have going on over in the pro shop.
You got it. Happy Thanksgiving, and I appreciate working with you, Ron. Appreciate working with you, Anthony. It's been a great year. And Merry Christmas if we don't see you as well.
Amen. Merry Christmas to you as well, brother.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
See ya. Brian Tolnar from Mill Creek. While we were conversing on golf, some news broke pertaining to the National Football League, pertaining to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their game on Thanksgiving night has been moved. The Baltimore Ravens have at least 2 guys that have tested positive for COVID, and they're wanting to move the game to Sunday. So the Steelers game against the Ravens was supposed to be Thanksgiving night, tomorrow night. That game has now been moved to Sunday. Our friend of the show, Aditi Kinkabwala, she said the Steelers players, and I am quoting, pissed off that they have to play on Sunday instead of Thursday. This is the second time this year that the Steelers have had a game canceled or moved a day before they were supposed to play.
I forget what happened last year.
Or this second time this year that
second,
it happened.
I thought you meant
second time this year that this has happened to the Steelers.
I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, second time this year that it has happened to the Steelers.
It's weird because like 2 players, that should be enough where you can still go out and play the game if you're the Ravens. I don't understand why they have to shut down the game and you get into Dabo Sweeney land where you start to say, it's just an excuse.
Well, it's just.
Can you believe he said that?
It's one. Well,
By the way, can you believe he just went and said, you know what, it was an excuse and they just didn't want to play?
That's
next time Florida State meets Clemson in anything, watch out.
I think you've created a really interesting rivalry now for sure. I mean, you just opened a door that nobody should be opening.
The AD's response, the Clemson's AD response to that was the most awkward thing I've ever heard because he has to back up his coach, but he also, you could tell he was really upset that Dabo went out and said that.
Yeah, that's just not good. Not good.
Dabo.
So it is what it is, unfortunately. But no, the Steeler game against the Baltimore Ravens has been moved to Sunday. Second time this year that the Steelers have had a game moved 24 hours before the game is supposed to start.
Just don't move my Cowboys on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, don't move my Lions or my Cowboys, otherwise my Thanksgiving is shot. And I'm kind of, in the COVID world that we're living in, I'm kind of surprised that we're actually going to have football played tomorrow.
I'm rooting hard for the Redskins. Go Alex Smith. Let's win that division. Let's lock in that comeback player of the year. I'm rooting for you, but
honestly,
I know a lot of people. He's already won it.
Well, yeah, the moment he stepped on the field, he won the award, which kind of sucks for Ben because he's coming off of an elbow injury where you normally don't come back, and he's had a pretty good year. I mean, But by the way, you're on the. You're way down the list right now.
It was amazing to see. His first start, he had a career game. Career best in stats.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
And he's working with nothing. I mean, he's got nothing in Washington. It's wow. I just can't.
Yeah. So the amazing thing is 6 wins is going to win that division this year.
Yep.
And that's going to speak to how many people are going to jump on the, divisional winners shouldn't be guaranteed a playoff spot bandwagon, which it happens once every 10 years or so.
Yeah, you usually don't get a whole division that's this bad. This is an anomaly. And I think if you go take care of business and beat the teams that you play twice and win that division, then you should be rewarded a little bit more than the teams that get into the playoffs and don't. I mean, you have to win against the teams that you play twice. And if you can't win that division, then it's tough luck. I don't care if your record's 10-6.
Yeah. Look, it's the scary thing is Philadelphia, New York, Washington, or Dallas will have the 4 seed, and they'll be playing a home game in the first round of the playoffs. And it is what it is.
If you want to say, hey, we're 10-6, go prove it.
Go prove it. Go beat them in their building. It is what it is. If you're a Browns fan, you want to root for the Steelers to beat the Ravens, but now it's not going to be played until Sunday, so you don't have to worry about Thursday night.
You don't have to vomit up your Thanksgiving dinner trying to root for the Steelers.
Yeah, you can now eat your turkey in peace, knowing full well that you don't have to throw up watching the Steelers and the Ravens play. So, Browns Nation, you're welcome. 330-886-0813. John Vargo coming up in a bit. We'll chat with John. That's all coming up in a bit. Stick around.
Hi, this is Tommy Clem, owner of WRS Insurance Solutions, reminding you that it is open enrollment for Medicare.
Now through December 7th, those who qualify can visit our local independent agency by calling us at 330-953-3722 or visiting us at wrsinsurancesolutions.com to learn more.
Good luck to all the student athletes in the Valley.
Attention all football fans. If you can't see your team play, come and dine with us and watch it live at Boardman, Canfield, or Cortland. Or staying at home, we'll deliver right to your door. That's Coca's Pizza. We serve it hot.
2020 will be a season like we've never seen before, but 21 Sports and YSN will be there for every key moment. The plays, the players, and the stories that will headline this season. Delivered by 21 Sports and YSN.
Planning a project around your home or rental property? Trust the electrical service to the local experts with 62 years of serving the Mahoning Valley. Joe Dickey Electric is your local go-to source for responsive, reliable residential electrical work. From everyday maintenance and repairs to new installations, electrical upgrades, and safety inspections, no job is too big or too small. Call Joe Dickey Electric today, 800-549-3976, or visit DickeyElectric.com. That's DickeyElectric.com.
Myers Family Insurance knows the importance of a great team.
Our team continues to grow to help you with your Medicare and retirement needs.
The annual election period is here, so it's all hands on deck to make sure your plan still meets your needs for 2020.
Call us today.
I went to Greenwood Chevrolet because
I was really interested in looking at the tracks.
Because I wanted my dream truck.
Because I've been going there for 20 years.
I'm really happy that I went
to Greenwood Chevrolet.
Because they really went
the extra mile for me.
Now we're going the extra mile for you, only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
Baird Brothers remains your source for fine hardwood products. For the time being, we're open for customer pickup only on weekdays, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and Saturday from 9 a.m. till noon. Place your order online at BairdBrothers.com. Baird Brothers, for the place you love.
Quality, customer service, and integrity. Those are the 4 words that have driven our success since 1957 at Joe Dickey Electric.
Joe Dickey Electric is one Mahoning Valley landmark business that stays current with the requirements of our customers. Family owned and managed, we are an electrical contractor and energy solutions provider. Every member of our team adds to his or her skill set through ongoing training. Residential, commercial, industrial, automotive, and more. We keep ahead of the needs of our customers with a fleet of more than 50 vehicles and 24/7 emergency service, so you're never left in the dark.
The 4M Company, being an architect and construction manager for over 40 years, has had the opportunity to use many different electrical businesses for our projects. The depth, quality, and knowledge and attention to detail displayed by Dickey Electric makes them stand out above all the rest.
For state-of-the-art expertise and a timeless commitment to our customers, contact Joe Dickey Electric. We are everything electrical.
Armstrong Local Programming has always delivered an exclusive and unique perspective on the very best events your region offers. High school sports, community events, parades, all your favorite shows from Armstrong are now calling the Neighborhood Channel their home.
Watch Out and About, Locally Speaking, and many other great local shows right here on the Armstrong Neighborhood Channel.
Find out everything that the Neighborhood Channel has to offer at ArmstrongNeighborhood.com. Spirit, town pride, local communities. Welcome to the neighborhood.
Right now is a great time to get more for your trade-in at Tri-State Ford and drive home in a new or pre-owned vehicle. Choose from our great selection of new Ford models or pre-owned vehicles. Plus, get the Tri-State Ford Advantage, including a 10-year, 200,000-mile warranty and more. At Tri-State Ford, we'll pay you top dollar for your trade, but you don't have to purchase one of ours to sell us yours.
Customer focus, community driven. Tri-State Ford East Liverpool or visit tristатeford.net.
Welcome back to a Wednesday edition of Running Points on ysnlive.com. Ron Pochesta with you alongside Anthony Hartwig. Final show of the week. We're off tomorrow and we're off on Friday. So we're getting all of our guests from the week all lined up. And we normally bring him on every Wednesday at 2 o'clock. So he's at his normal bat time, same bat channel. He would be batty. John Vargo from The Vindicator and the Tribune Chronicle joining us. John, how are you today, sir?
Good. That's how my wife would sometimes describe me, too.
Anthony and I kicked off the program by talking about what Governor DeWine did yesterday in suggesting that fans don't show up for winter sports and that the schools just play the basketball games and the wrestling events and the swimming and diving and all the winter sports without any fans. The OHSAA would not even, that the ink wasn't even dry, and the last word wasn't even uttered when the OHSAA put out a press release and said, no, we're going to allow the parents to watch their children play, whether it's basketball, swimming and diving, bowling, whatnot. Having said that, I just don't think that it makes sense from a business perspective to allow any sports to happen until early January. And Anthony and I were lamenting on this. If that's the case, then we should have just basically said statewide, hey, we're not doing anything until January the 4th. That's when our winter season's going to start.
Well,
if that was,
there's many ways I could go on this tangent right now, but I think the one thing is, I'm in agreement with what Trumbull County did, and I think they should reassess once the beginning of the year is here and figure out what's going on. I mean, there's pretty much everybody. I don't know too many schools that are not, on remote learning at this point, because of spiking cases. I mean, you got to be careful with this thing. I'm not going to go into medical issues. I really don't, I'm not going to pretend I know what medical, how this actually spreads, why it spreads or anything like that. And I think we're all learning as we go at this point. But the one thing I do know is, you just got to be careful with this. And being indoors is different than the fall sports that were outdoors. And I can't really. I wish I could form an opinion at this point, but I think just being on the safe side is probably the best cautionary tale. But I can tell you this too: coaches are taking every precaution to be as vigilant as possible. And I know they did that during the volleyball seasons. You saw people wearing their masks. You saw people socially distant. You saw people following the rules during the volleyball season. So, I mean, I'm fine with either way, but there also have been crowds as well. I mean, I had a guy told me from Worcester when I was covering the JFK Dalton game. He said there was one game that there were 90% capacity in the stands for a football game. So, I mean, I wish I could form a correct opinion on this, but I don't know if there's a correct answer for this whole thing. But I just think being cautious and just taking, and being proactive and, doing what's in the best interest of not only the kids, but for the coaches, for the officials, for the older people who are going to be more affected by this disease than anything else.
Don't you wish, though, that if you were going to push to January, that decision would have come last week before some teams started? I mean, there are some teams that have played 2 or 3 games already, so now they're going to have to start their season, get into shape, and then have to shut down. I just, as a fan, as a media member, I just wish that it would have been a little bit more planned out. It seems very reactionary right now when they're just making this decision on the fly instead of taking the 3 weeks that most of these schools, except the ones that were deep into the football playoffs, had the opportunity to sit back and think about it for about 3 weeks before they made a decision. I just wish it would have happened before the season started.
Well, true, but I think we probably might, and I don't know if it'll ever come out. I think we all know why the decision didn't come out last week, because the football playoffs is OHSA's bread and butter, especially the state tournament. So I think that the last thing they were going to let happen is the state tournament, state football championships get canceled. Even though it was 15%, even though, it's still money in their pockets at this point. So I didn't see that happening. I fully expected that after the state tournament was done, come Monday, they were going to shut everything down. Come Monday, and they were going to say, hey, we're not going to be playing basketball. We're not going to be doing anything till January or whatever. But they're going to go full bore on this. So I don't know for how long, because you have the Trumbull County Health Department, the Mahoney County Health Department are probably giving you a different answer than what the OHSA is giving you. So who's going to win in this power struggle? I think that's the one thing I think we have to, figure out, before we go forward. So, I mean, and people just, and so many voices telling you one thing and telling you another is just, it's beyond frustrating at this point, because you don't know what's happening from day to day, and you just wish you had a clear, concise answer.
Assuming that Mahoning and Columbiana counties fall in line with what Trumbull County just did, where they're not going to allow anybody to play any sports through December, and school picks back up after Christmas break on Monday, January the 4th. So a starting date of Monday, January the 4th, that's 7 weeks prior to the last week in February. And there's a lot to unpack here. Do you have the boys and girls tournaments at the same time instead of staggered by 1 week? If you have it at the same time, then they both have 7 weeks worth of sports to do. Do you have the girls and guys staggered? Well, then the girls would have 6 weeks and the guys would have 7 weeks. January 4th. Now, are these kids allowed to work out prior to January 4th? Because if they're not allowed to work out, now you can't start a season on January the 4th, and that cuts even more time to a quote-unquote season. And then when you get to your season, do you just play conference games and that's it? I mean, there is so much to unpack here. It's crazy.
Well, I think this goes back to where the ADs were back in the summer. They are going to make every bit of their money they're paid, and and most of them are underpaid. Just to figure out the holy mess that is probably going to come to try to figure out, okay, are we going to get those 22 games in? I just don't. I don't see most of these teams getting 22 games because, Ron, unless if we're still dealing with the same things in January, you're going to have either contact tracing, you're either going to have, somebody's going to test positive for COVID. So who's going to be out? Are you going to shut the whole team down? Is that person going to quarantine? I think we got more questions than, and we're just going round and round in circles right now. We don't even know who's going, what's happening. So I think maybe from the OHSA standpoint, the governor's office, the local boards of health need to either sometimes get on the same page and figure this thing out together as a complete unit instead of separate factions and confusing the heck out of everybody else. So, unless that's going to happen, we're going to have this holy confusion where, athletic directors, school boards, and students and teachers and student athletes are just going to have no idea what the heck they're doing for the next month or so.
And all that craziness aside, let's try to bring some normalcy into this show. When you look at winter sports, you look at the basketball seasons, who are some teams on both sides, girls and boys, that you think we should watch out for and could really put together good seasons no matter how many games they play?
Well, I first of all would say JFK basketball. I think they've put in a great offseason. Mark Homelack's team has just put in an amazing offseason. I love to see what they're going to do. McDonald girls had an impressive start against Columbiana. Frankly, I think they put on the brakes in the fourth quarter. I thought that thing they were going to put 100. I thought Jeff Brazil was coaching that team. It's like the way they were putting up points left and right. But Tony Matisse's team, that's, that when he got hired, that's what he told me. He was going to put the pedal to the metal, for that team, and just change the way they played, and just play, full court games. So that's going to be an interesting team to see as well. So I think those two teams stand out to me right now. I'm just curious to see how Boardman, comes back, because Pat Birch has done a wonderful job down at Boardman. I like to see them still, in the mix right now and try to. Warren Harding's another team. I'm just curious to see how they're going to put things together. Keelan Franklin's second year, just how they're going to be, more cohesive this year. And another team is Bristol Panthers. Every time you think they're out of the picture, they come back because Craig Geezy does such a wonderful job up there. And he always has a way to find a winner, and they've just dominated the NAC for years up there. And the shame of it is I would love to see them play more AAC teams, MBAC teams to get tested for the postseason. And I would love to see them be in one of those two conferences just to get themselves more, especially those MBAC teams, to have them acclimated for, the postseason more than they are right now.
Hey, I'm all aboard for Bristol and Newton Falls because I know Newton Falls year in, year out. Coach Roy has a wonderful team up there. I'd love to see those two teams do battle 2 times.
Oh, well, they actually did battle, and I just saw a little bit. I know Newton Falls really put it to them in a scrimmage. So they scrimmaged about a week or so ago, and Newton Falls, I don't know. For me, I'm just so interested how Roy Sembach gets, because he has this Marquette kid coming in at 6'6", 245. It's like, how in the world do they get those kids that are just, either 6'7", 6'8". I know they had Marcus Fowler years ago at 6'11". They have huge kids out there. But I would just like to see Newton Falls put it together and maybe win a district title this year. And hopefully maybe this is the year Roy Sembach's team does that.
Well, another team that we really haven't talked all that much about, and you go in the city, Youngstown Cheney. Last year, I don't know what they would have done against Akron, St. Vincent, St. Mary. Who knows? They were set to play them in the regional semifinals when all hell broke loose. But Cheney has a lot of kids returning. And, again, depending on when the season starts and how many games are played, I think Cheney is another team that I think could make a serious run.
Yeah, funny thing is, I was supposed to cover that game that night, so it's like go down to Canton to cover that Cheney St. V game. And lo and behold, my last game I covered was in Chicago, Illinois. Basketball game I covered was Chicago, Illinois, with the YSU out there. So it's Cheney has built a culture out there, not only for boys basketball but for football. And if you step foot in that school, and Kristen Mill was so gracious enough last football season, to let me in, how they handled their study sessions and everything like that up to practice. And the way they have changed that, Marlon McGahee and Kristen Mill have just, transformed these players into not only believing they can do it on the court, but they can do it off the court and sustain success. So, kudos to what both those coaches have done there.
When I look at some of the teams that stand out for basketball, I think you're right about Boardman. I know they lost quite a bit, but I think Coach Birch does a wonderful job down there. I think he's going to have something to say about this whole idea that they're going to be rebuilding. I think he's gonna smirk at some people and maybe put a foot down and say that Boardman's still there to stay. When you talk about boys basketball, I think Crestview's going to surprise some people. I think they finally got a foothold. I think Gates is just a great coach to have in that program, and I think they have a legitimate shot to win that conference, to be honest.
Well, and I'll tell you, another team we should be talking about is Canfield Girls, and the way they had an impressive win against West Branch last night. This is a team that made to the district semifinals last year and lost to Harding. But I can tell you this, when I watched that game, they had a lot of underclassmen on that Canfield team, and they are going to be hungry to come back this year. So, Canfield, and we have to talk about the Harding girls as well. They made a run to the district title game last year, and they have most of their team back. You got Faith Birch, who is already signed with Cleveland State. So, those two teams are going to be the gold standard as far as girls basketball, along with McDonald and I got to put in Western Reserve girls. Those 4 teams, as far as girls basketball goes, are going to be the ones to watch in this area.
I think we actually could have one team that actually scoots down to, well, this year it wouldn't be Columbus, it would be somewhere else. But I actually believe that we could get one girls basketball team, at least one, down to Columbus.
God, don't forget about South Range. They were a couple plays away from beating Elyra Catholic last year, and they're bringing back everybody.
Yeah, and it's girls basketball is something that in this area we had probably about maybe almost a decade-long drought as far as, having, a really good girls basketball team. Then we had the run of Ursuline teams, going back to the mid-2000s that had some really good teams with Courtney Davidson. It's like So now, I mean, yeah, we could have somebody get down to Dayton, and play down there and play those tournament games down in Dayton. So it's like, I just think it would be a great thing to see for basketball. South Range is a great team. I'm glad you brought that up, Anthony, because I forgot all about South Range. So it's like, and yeah, there's some really good basketball to be played around this area, and I know and we've said it before, it's a football area, but basketball is starting to take a little more of a foothold in this area and make its mark around Northeast Ohio and around the state.
Well, it's in the last couple of years, both the boys and the girls tournament-wise, when they go up against out-of-town opponents in the sectional, district, and regionals, the records have improved dramatically from 3 years ago to last year, where we were actually above 500 in the sectionals and districts. Now, unfortunately, we weren't able to play any regionals for the boys. We actually did quite well for the regionals for the girls. So, yeah, I think basketball is slowly but surely it's gotten a whole lot better. Now, whether we have a team in boys basketball that can do something that hasn't been done since LeBray went to Columbus, I don't know if we'll have a team Columbus worthy, but we'll certainly have some programs that are not going to embarrass themselves in the regionals.
Well, I'll tell you what. If I'm going to say one team who had a boys team who has a shot to get to Columbus, and it was the same team probably back in 17 that probably should have won the state title because they lost to the eventual state champion Lutheran East, is JFK. I would say if any boys team has a shot to get to Columbus and has a shot to bring home the hardware this year, it's probably the JFK boys.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that there's some talent there. There's no two ways about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Cam Hollabaugh came on like gangbusters last year as one of the better basketball players in this area. I mean, and they have a good surrounding cast they have built for the last couple of years. And just like their football team, I mean, I think this team has a run in them. Not only because, they have talent, because they put into hard work in the offseason. If you watch Mark Comlack's Instagram account and his Twitter account, I mean, you could see how much these guys have put in during the offseason.
Plus, Sean, you know this. They're extremely well coached, and that'll get you far, too. I mean, they have kids that buy into the philosophy and that they go 110% for their coach, and that's half the battle right there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And Mark does a job like nobody else. And I got to say this, too. The administration there at JFK has been fully supportive of him, and I know probably, maybe about 10 years ago, you probably couldn't say the same thing, but I mean, I love the staff, and the administration there at JFK and how they support not only their coaches, but their student athletes and their student body there. I think they do an excellent job there at JFK, and they should be very proud of themselves.
John, before we let you go, and we're speaking with John Vargo from the Tribune Chronicle and the Vindicator, we've been talking high school. Well, John is the beat reporter for the YSU men's and women's basketball program. Both programs currently sitting down as both programs had someone test positive within the men's and women's basketball program. So, unfortunately, the guys are going to miss the first 5 games of the season. They were to have played tonight as well as Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They're going to miss those 4 games. They're going to miss the West Virginia game on December 2nd. The YSU women have missed the first few games because they're in quarantine right now. The non-conference schedule, fluid situation is probably the best way to describe it. But I got to believe that Ron Strollo is starting to tear his hair out trying to figure out what in the world the men's and women's basketball program can do non-conference schedule-wise up until the Horizon League starts.
Well, actually, Ron Strollo has about as much hair as I do. It's like, and I don't think either one of us are going to tear what we got left out. So it's like, but I talked to Ron yesterday, and I have a story coming out. I think it should be be in tomorrow's paper about YSU men's and women's basketball. It's a big, lengthy story about the COVID, about what's going on with them, and I can tell you this: the women's team, you're going to be jumping right into conference basketball. Everything goes well on December 12th and 13th. I think I have those dates correct. And then the men on the 19th and 20th, both at Northern Kentucky. And as far as the men go, I know they're still trying to get a couple games, non-conference games. I don't know how successful they're going to be because there's so much protocol they have to go through, and I won't get into bore you with the details, but I mean, there's a lot of steps. If you test positive and for your trip back, I can just say you're looking probably about a 3-week to a month return, to get through everything, especially through this time of the year, to go through the test, to go through everything, and then you have to have a 7 to 10 day down period, reacclimation period to go through. I mean, those are through the NCAA, your, Youngstown Board of Health. I mean, there's so many details you have to go through to get back to playing, if you do test positive. So there's so many unknowns at this point, it's like, and this is why the NCAA gave winter sports athletes all, seniors through freshmen, all an extra year of eligibility because they're going to need it, especially after this season, because there's not going to, I mean, yes, you have, games on the schedule, but if somebody tests positive, there's contact tracing and there's things like that. I mean, your program's going to be shut down for, either 7 to 10 days to 2 weeks. It's a holy mess right now.
Yeah, all that being said, with the I'm just grateful that there are basketball games on right now. I mean, I've been flipping through ESPN the last couple hours, and there's basketball being played in the NCAA, and that in itself is kind of a statement considering all the protocols you just laid down about all the things that could go wrong.
Right, and they have a good support staff there, with their athletic trainer, their doctors. It's like at YSU, to keep everybody as safe as possible. So people are quarantining right now, and we'll see how soon they get back on the floor for both teams. Right now, that's a big unknown for both squads at this point.
Hey, John, always a pleasure. Look forward to catching up with you next week, sir.
No problem. Take care, guys.
See ya. John Vargo from the Vindicator as well as the Tribune Chronicle. I was wondering why you were checking out a blank. I'm looking at you looking at this screen, and I'm like, wait a second. Is he watching TV over there?
A little bit. I was checking in on Daisonette Harris, who opened the season today for Pitt with a double-double. So
this is her sophomore year.
Sophomore season.
Wow. So. And then she's going to be repeating her sophomore year next year because, again, the NCAA has everyone getting an extra year of eligibility. This is a mulligan year for everyone.
Yeah, I had the privilege to broadcast a couple of her games when she played for Ursuline, and my word, that girl could just get a shot wherever she wanted. It didn't matter what you did. She could drop 28 on you like that, and a lot of the game plan for the teams were let her score what she wants to score and shut down everybody else, because that's the only way you're going to beat Ursuline.
She was probably the best all-around player that I've seen since, and you'll recognize this name because she played basketball in the early 80s at South Range and got a scholarship, a full-ride scholarship. To Old Dominion, which back in the day, Old Dominion was a elite, top-tier women's basketball program. Jackie Kenny was the best basketball player I have ever seen on the floor for girls basketball in high school.
She has scoring records at South Range that will never be broken.
No.
Well, I won't see that because there are players that come around that'll maybe get her career number, because you never know, because there are some players that pop up and get 2,000 points. It happens. Her career number's in the 1800s. But no one's going to get her points in a game record. I'm just going to say that right now. It's above 50, and I don't think anyone is going to come through and break that.
I think the only reason why someone would break that record, and I'll just throw this out there, in that era, freshmen did not play varsity basketball. This Jackie Kenny played 3 years of varsity basketball. She did not start playing varsity ball until her sophomore year. And spoiler alert, she could have played varsity basketball her freshman year. They didn't do that for whatever reason. They didn't allow freshmen to play varsity basketball in that era.
I'm sure the coach was sitting there like, really?
Yeah. And if I were the coach, I'd have been like, she's playing varsity ball, and I really don't care about a phantom rule.
The other JV coaches that had to play her on JV were like,
oh,
really?
God. Yeah, you're really? Just like, she's the best player on this court, and we have to play her in JV because she's a freaking freshman. Are you kidding me? Yeah, that was an antiquated rule way back in the day.
That's another reason why you see a lot of these players start getting 1,000 points more often. They're playing.
Yeah, they're playing freshman year. Absolutely, they are. Now, Jackie Kenny is hands down to the best basketball player I ever saw in girls basketball in this area. Bonnie Beachy, who graduated in '78 from Struthers, is up there as well. Let's go to Champ. Champ, you're on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline. What up, brother?
Thanks for taking my call, and I hope you guys have a safe and happy Thanksgiving.
It's gonna be a small Thanksgiving for sure, but it's 2020, and hopefully COVID gets under control real soon.
Yeah. I'm the stat guy. I would like to add a little statistics to some of your discussions.
Do it.
Quickly. First of all, on the NFC least, okay, the division where unless the 3 teams that are 3-7 go 6-0, or Philadelphia goes 5-1, you're going to have a team with a non-winning record win that division.
Yep.
And keep in mind that in 2002 is when they started the 4 divisions and the 2 wild cards. So that's when you had 4 versus 5 in 2002. There was 4 times that a team had a non-winning record. That means 8 losses or more as the 4th seed. The 08 Chargers were 8-8, and they played the 12-4 Indianapolis Colts, and they beat them. In 2011, the Denver Broncos were 8-8 as the 4th seed, and they beat the 5th seed Pittsburgh 12-4. I believe that might have been the Tim Tebow amazing.
Yeah, that was the Tebow game where he threw for 316 yards and everyone lost their mind.
The end of that season, Tebow could not be stopped in the fourth quarter. Like, you look at his fourth quarter numbers.
They were unreal.
He's like top 3 in NFL history when it comes to, I think, like last 10 games in fourth quarter QBR, because Mahomes just did that. He's number 2 and Tom Brady's number 1, but then there's Tebow right there at number 3, which was just really weird to see.
Well, that would be like flunking out your first 11 grades and again passing in your 12th grade, so not impressive to me.
Okay.
But anyways, now in the NFC, it happened twice. In 2010, 7-9 Seattle beat 11-5 New Orleans, 4-5, and in 2014, Carolina was 7-8-1, and they beat 11-5 Arizona. So it happens 4 times to each conference. So a team with a non-winning record as the 4th seed is 4-0 since 2002 in the playoffs. So
that's an interesting number. Yeah, that's an interesting number, and I pity the 5 seed that has to play whoever wins the NFC East.
That Seattle game, that was the beast mode game when he ran through the whole New Orleans defense.
Yes,
I believe.
yes, sir. Yeah.
And also keep in mind too, when you look at the champions, there's only been 1 5 seed ever to win the Super Bowl, and that was the Giants team of 2007 that went 4-0, and they upset the New England Patriots. That's the only time the 5th seed. So I guess what I'm saying here is the worst seed maybe to get in the NFL playoffs might be the 5th seed.
Yeah, well, it's this year it's going to be interesting, and I don't know who the 5 seed is right now, but whoever it is, you're going to either be playing Philadelphia, New York, Washington, or Dallas, and
I think it's whoever's in second in the West, right? Probably be the 5.
I mean, I honestly, the last I saw it was Tampa, but Tampa lost to the Rams on Monday night, and I honestly have not seen the. Hang on a second. Let me run through the NFC right now, and the 5 seed right now is the Seahawks. They were the 5 seed, so they would be playing Philadelphia if the season were to end right now. Seahawks would be playing Philadelphia, so Philadelphia would be upsetting Seattle if everything goes as planned.
Now, let's talk about the college football playoff rankings from last night. Let me just throw a little stats at you this way. Now, first of all, I totally agree with Brian Driscoll. you can't. There's hardly any things you can compare because there's no conferences battling conferences anymore, and it's all interconference games between each other. So really, the only things you can really look at this point, in my opinion, is the quality wins and the quality losses. And you look at Alabama. Okay, they have a win over Texas A&M. They're the 5th-ranked team right now, 52-24, and they annihilated Kentucky. I think there's no doubt that Alabama has enough there to be. They should be actually. They could probably list Alabama 1, 2, and 3 right now, and have an inter-squad scrimmage for the first round of the playoffs.
Okay.
Now, number 2 Notre Dame has the win over number 3 ranked Clemson, but also they have wins over teams that are 5 and 4, both Pitt and BC. Now that's hard to compare with like Ohio State because the teams in the Big Ten they haven't played enough games to be 5 and 4s. So that's why at this point in the season, and the point he brought up about how Notre Dame after their 4th game won 12-7, that's kind of where Ohio State's at right now. Now Clemson, they have the loss at Notre Dame with the injuries on the road, but they also have a very impressive win against Miami, who's ranked 10th right now. So I think that's, to me, it might be the tiebreaker why they're ahead of Ohio State. Now, Ohio State, they have the win over number 12 Indiana, but there are 3 other wins right now against Nebraska, Penn State, and Rutgers. They have a combined 2-12 record. And unfortunately for Ohio State, their remaining games are against Illinois, Michigan, and Michigan State and Michigan. So I don't see how they can improve their resume at this point until they get to the Big Ten championship game. But is that going to be something with Northwestern maybe? I think the problem with the Ohio State right now is the Big Ten is a train wreck. Absolutely
it is
a train wreck right now.
I agree with you. And I think that if you're a Buckeye fan, you're rooting for Northwestern to run the table. So, and Northwestern's undefeated right now, by the way. And
right.
people probably don't realize that because
and you're also
it's a garbage conference.
You're also rooting for Indiana to win the rest of the games.
Absolutely, you are. And the more Indiana wins, the bigger that victory is for the Buckeyes. But Champ, you're right. I mean, the Big Ten's a train wreck right now.
That's why Brian brought up the point. You have to dive into the film when you're looking at teams this year, and you have to really watch and see, break down the games, and it's going to be a lot more eye test than normal.
Now, Texas A&M was ranked 5th. Now, they got blown out by Alabama, but they also beat Florida, who's ranked 6th. And Florida, who lost to Texas A&M, also has a win over Georgia. So I can see that's all you can compare right now. It's really difficult to – and when you talk about Oregon and USC, I mean, 2 and 3 games, it's so early. But I'll tell you one thing, though, that should be bothersome to Ohio State. And I looked this up because I was watching the Indiana game, and I thought to myself, what's Ohio State's defense? Ohio State's defense right now is not really what I would call a typical Ohio State championship defense. Against the rush and against the pass, they're somewhere in the 30s or 40s. But the one stat I saw, which is interesting, which is they call it a pass efficiency rating, and it's called the pass success rate allowed. Ohio State is 91st in the country in that. And they attribute that because they have their defensive backs and their secondary are playing too much zone, and maybe they need to be a little more aggressive. Now, they have some new coaches, but keep in mind that Ohio State every year, because of the talent they have, they lose a lot of players to the NFL, juniors especially. And one position that they've really been strong lately is defensive back. I mean, they have stud defensive backs. They're playing all over the NFL. And normally Ohio State season starts in September. They play a couple MAC schools. It's not what I call a really difficult schedule, and it gives these guys time to get used to what's going on before they head into their Big Ten conference schedule. Well, they didn't have that this year, and that's why I think potentially they could still get better. But keep in mind that last year, through 8 games, the Ohio State Buckeyes allowed 62 points. Through 4 games this year, they've allowed 104 points. This is not a typical Ohio State defense, and I think that's got to be bothersome. And I told somebody the other day, if Ohio State played Alabama tomorrow, I think Alabama will score 50 on them. No problem.
Alabama would definitely be in the 40s.
But then you have to look at Alabama's defense, and they're not doing amazing either.
No, it would be a track meet.
It'd be a track meet. So defense in college football is almost not irrelevant unless you're looking at Clemson at full strength and Notre Dame. Those are really the only 2 teams that are really playing consistently good defense when they're healthy.
Cincinnati's not a bad team defensively.
Yes.
Yeah. But again, the problem with Cincinnati, and it's going to be a problem with all the mid-majors, you're not in a Power 5 conference. You're not playing the the Power 5 conference type of schedule. And unless you go undefeated, you have absolutely, positively no chance to be in the top 4. And even if you do go undefeated, there's going to have to be some really bizarre stuff going on in order for you to get a top 4 seed. It just is what it is.
2020 might be the year that we get a weird.
We
team in the
might
playoffs.
actually get a non-Power 5 team in the Final Four this year.
Especially like if Notre Dame stubs their toe against like North Carolina
Agreed.
or Wake Forest.
And again, that North Carolina game, I cannot stress this enough. As a Notre Dame fan, I would not be a bit surprised if North Carolina upsets Notre Dame Friday.
All right, now here's my take on the Notre Dame-Carolina game. I looked at the stats, too. I mean, they compare. I mean, first of all, it's amazing. I think they have, like, almost the exact same rushing per game offensively. I think they're both offensive teams that can put up a lot of points. And also, Notre Dame's secondary has given up a lot of yardage, but that's maybe because of other reasons. But the one difference between the two teams, it's glaring, is that Notre Dame is 4th in the country against the rush. Carolina is not very good against the rush. And to me, and you know this, Ron, the thing about Notre Dame, since they've started being a good team again, is that when in the past when the offense struggled, the defense wasn't good enough to pick up the slack, and they would lose a lot of these games. But for whatever reason, the Notre Dame defense seems to always come through when they're needed lately. And what I mean by that is they could give up yardage, but they always seem to come with a key turnover, a key stop. They always seem to be there when the offense struggles or there's turnovers. And this game reminds me a lot of the 2018 game at Syracuse. Syracuse was a tremendous offense like Carolina is. They were averaging over 40 points a game, and Notre Dame won that game 36-3. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the final, but once again, the difference in this Notre Dame team, I keep saying it over and over again, is defensively they are deep. The guys that started last year for this team are playing less minutes this year because they have a lot more depth. They run guys in and out, and I think that's why they're able to finish games better. But I'm scared to death of this Carolina offense because, once again, the great equalizer is turnovers. But if Ian Book keeps playing the way he's playing, make good decisions, and I think the game will be close for a while, but eventually I think the defense, if they can shut their run down, then Notre Dame, that sets them up to make the plays, the sack or the fumble or the interception, which their defense always seems to do in key games. But Notre Dame has to play a game without turnovers, and I think if they do that, I think they can win this game. And I don't think Carolina's going to score over 30 points. I think that this is a game that the defense is going to make a statement because they've had a couple weeks off, and the last couple games the defense hasn't been sharp, but they are healthy, unlike the offense, as you know. But the defense is pretty healthy right now, and I think they're going to be the difference as long as the Notre Dame offense is efficient and doesn't turn the ball over.
Well, I'm going to be real curious to see what happens because I think 45-38 is somewhere in that vicinity, and it wouldn't surprise me if Carolina upsets Notre Dame. This game is. This game's going to be a tough one, I think
every game's a tough game.
Well, yeah. Now from here on out, everything is going to be tough. Now that the committee is taking over, who is considered to be the best? The committee is going to have a really, really difficult decision, given the fact that not everyone is playing the same amount of games. It's a weird year. It's. Anthony, you might be right. You might this year is so screwed up. You might actually have the unthinkable happen, and a non-Power 5 team gets into the Final Four.
If they do, every other non-Power 5 team is going to be rooting for them to do something.
Oh God, absolutely.
At least compete because that'll tell the committee that it's okay to do it.
How many of those non-Power 5 teams were dancing when Boise State shocked Oklahoma? Right. In the the Orange Bowl?
Fiesta Bowl.
Or Fiesta Bowl, you're right. So I mean, if a non-Power 5 gets into the Final Four, good God, this could be fun. And hopefully it's Cincinnati. I'd love to see the Bearcats.
And they market it as Ohio's team. So.
That's it.
We know how stubborn the NCAA can be. And I don't understand. This is one thing I don't understand. Because they could fix a lot of problems by doing this. Every other sport during this pandemic has increased the amount of teams in the playoffs, whether it's 1, 2, or 3. I don't understand why they don't go to some system where they have just this year, maybe 6 or 8, or even have like 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. And that would solve a lot of problems, I think, if they would do that just for 1 year, but they won't. They're stubborn. They wouldn't do that. Other sport has increased the playoffs, and it's worked good for that.
We
But
have
they
a
won't
bowl
do that,
system.
But I think
Champ,
they
there's a bowl system in place. They're not gonna expand the
Yeah.
playoffs because they
And they
trample on the bowl games.
They've also come out and
Yeah, but
said that if like the number 4 team has a COVID outbreak, they're not going to replace them. So I don't know what they're going to do instead. But if you're number 4 and you all of a sudden can't play that game, they're not going to bring up the number 5 team and say you're number 4 now.
Okay, well
They've
then,
already come
and
out and
same
said
thing
that.
with number 1, number 2, or number
Right.
3. I mean, if you have a COVID outbreak, sucks to be you. You're
Right.
done, and the team that you were supposed to be playing
guess
is
I'll
going to
just
get
move on.
carte blanche
Right.
to the championship game.
But I think Ohio State, if they win out, they're going to be in. But I don't think I don't know if Ohio State can improve their position from where they're at now if the teams ahead of them don't lose. If Notre Dame would lose a close game to Clemson and they both have one loss, I still think Ohio State's going to stay at 4 because the rest of their schedule is not exactly something where they're going to have a signature win left. Unless Northwestern turns out to be this juggernaut, which I'm not sure about that, but they're going to make it if they go undefeated. But I'm not sure if they can get out of 4 if the teams ahead of them don't lose.
Well, and we forgot one team when it comes to old school defense, and that's Northwestern. Northwestern has played unbelievable. Yeah, hold on a second. We have to adjust the glasses and talk like this because that's how the smart people talk like. And Lovey, Northwestern, past the Grey Poupon, they're playing some great defense.
Yes, they're playing some really good defense right now. And Bueller.
Bueller. Where are you, Bueller? Yeah, no, Northwestern is that team's playing some good defense, and they're winning a lot of games on the defensive side of the ball. I hope Northwestern, and if you're a Buckeye fan, you got to really hope Northwestern stays undefeated and Ohio State and Northwestern battle each other, because that would be a huge.
They have Wisconsin this week, right?
No, they already beat Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, they already beat Wisconsin. So Northwestern, that's Ohio State's hope to possibly move up a spot.
Ohio State's happy that Purdue and Iowa aren't on their schedule because those two
Well,
teams.
yeah, those are the two teams that.
Through Ohio State's history, it's always been Purdue or Iowa that always just stubs their toe at some point.
Well, Illinois has always been one of those tricky teams.
Remember back when they had Juice Williams?
Yeah, they almost. I was
came
living
close.
in Illinois at the time.
Juice.
Yeah, I was like an hour and change from Champaign. So, that Juice Williams, that era was kind of fun to watch.
And keep in mind the positioning of these 4 teams. I'll leave with this: is that they may be a little concerned about if Notre Dame and Clemson both make it, about matching them up in the first round. I don't know if they want to do that for the 3rd time. They could happen in the finals, but they may do all they can to avoid Notre Dame and Clemson meeting not only for the 3rd time, but be meeting right after they played in the ACC championship. I think that's got to be something they're thinking about. Do we want to do that for a 3rd time?
Well, look, I mean, if Notre Dame loses, they're automatically 4. If they're a playoff team, they're automatically number 4.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at a couple years ago when they did Alabama and Georgia. They didn't want them to match up in the semifinals. They matched up in the championship, and they might do the same thing if 2 teams in the same conference.
Yeah, and I think that if that's the case, and let's say Clemson defeats Notre Dame in the ACC title game, which I think is probably going to happen, Alabama stays at number 1 because they're not going to lose to Florida. That's not going to happen.
Clemson 2.
Clemson would be 2. The Buckeyes, assuming they get past Northwestern, would be number 3, and then Notre Dame would be number 4, and then Ohio State gets to try to get revenge on Clemson.
And Notre Dame gets the privilege of playing Alabama.
Yeah, this is true.
Well, I'm nervous about the North Carolina game, but if I see them putting up 2 hoops, I'll be really nervous.
Yeah, no kidding.
As long as they keep, that would make me really nervous. But anyways, you guys have a good Thanksgiving. I appreciate your show. Thanks a lot.
All right, see you, champ. 330-886-0813. We're back in a bit. Stick around.
21 News.
Let's get right to our top story tonight.
More experienced reporters
A new Wilmington restaurant.
GM Lordstown.
telling more local stories.
We'll look at efforts. Boy is recovering from a broken
around our valley.
Community in Niles. We are here in Youngstown, right up.
Because you expect
It's important for everyone. No place like home.
more local news.
In Mercer County Court.
21 News is our valley's #1 local news.
Welcome home to a home made homier with Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods. Inspiration starts at BairdBrothers.com and is turned into reality when high-quality hardwoods are delivered right to your home. Baird Brothers has the latest design trends, shiplap and skinny lap interior siding, antique oak rustic flooring, and, well, you'll find them all at BairdBrothers.com. Ordered easily, delivered conveniently, enjoyed comfortably. BairdBrothers.com.
Attention football fans, order Coca's Pizza tailgate package for only $54.99. You'll receive 24 slices of our delicious cheese pizza, 20 jumbo wings, and 2 of our famous foot-long pepperoni rolls. Coca's Pizza, we serve it hot.
Hi, this is Tommy Clem, owner of WRS Insurance Solutions.
WRS Insurance Solutions is a local independent agency that specializes in life, Medicare, long-term care, and disability products. Call us at 330-953-3722 or visit us at wrsinsurancesolutions.com to learn more.
Good luck to all the student athletes in the Valley.
Your Armstrong services are more important than ever. There are more and more connected devices in the home these days. To get the most out of your experience, you need a network that is always getting better. You deserve superior performance, and that's what Armstrong offers every day. Whether you're working from home, enjoying your favorite content together, or simply catching up while apart, count on Armstrong to keep you connected to what matters most.
To Greenwood Chevrolet because
I was really interested in looking at the tracks.
Because I wanted my dream truck.
Because I've been going there for 20 years. I think whenever we go there, whatever car we're looking for, they have tremendous inventory.
If you're looking for people who care about you, Greenwood is the place to go.
You know, it's like family there. The girls know me in service. It's Miss Kim in the Tahoe.
I'm really happy that I went
to Greenwood Chevrolet.
Because they really went
the extra mile for me.
Now we're going the extra mile for you, only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
For heating, cooling, and indoor air quality, the Mahoning Valley trusts MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning, offering worry-free repair, service, and installation. Call MP Vivo today for a free estimate.
MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning. We're your energy-efficient experts.
Welcome back to a Wednesday edition of Running Point on ysnlive.com. The big story during the 1 o'clock hour while we had Brian Tolnar on, the Steelers-Ravens game has been moved. That game was supposed to be played on Thanksgiving night because Baltimore has a COVID outbreak. They have moved that game to Sunday. So no Thanksgiving night game between the Steelers and the Ravens. That game will be played on Sunday. Let's go to Emmanuel. Emmanuel, you're on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline. Happy Thanksgiving, brother.
Same to you and yours. I'll try to make this quick. Now, first of all, Baltimore is scared to play us, so we'll play them Sunday. But getting back to Ohio State, you know, this is a stat you guys left out. In the history since the bowl championship series or the college championship tournament, whatever you want to call it, when the first rankings come out, the very first rankings of the year, who's ever ranked number 3 has never made the Final Four. And that scenario that you just said would put Clemson out of it.
This is true.
They would be 5.
Wow.
So we're okay. You know, I know Mr. Statman's talking all that stuff, but that's a stat that I'm okay with. And then I figured something out, too. Because, Ronnie, you know, I did a little bit of traveling, so I missed out on a lot of stuff. But I kept hearing about, you know, this guy was playing quarterback for YSU. I guess his name was Bumgardner. Now, they say not only was this guy great on the field, he was a better man off the field. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not the brightest bulb in the house, but I can shine a little bit of light. And I'm thinking, well, Bumgardner for Springfield, I'm wondering, are they related? Yeah. And then I find out that they are, so that might explain a lot because, I mean, this guy, this Bumgardner, I guess, was almost like a Jim Trussel's disciple. They say this guy, okay, well, fill me in, will you?
Yeah, Mark Brungard was the YSU quarterback and was quite good at quarterback at Youngstown State, and he stayed in the Valley. And Mark got married, and his son Bo is the quarterback for the Springfield Tigers. So Mark is the guy in charge of the offense for Coach Guerrero, and his son Bo is the quarterback. And the age-old question that we all have is, which one was better in high school and which one will be better long-term? And that is a question that is yet to be answered. But, no, Mark Brungard was a hell of a good quarterback in high school. And his kid, that apple has not fallen far from the tree. There's no question about that.
Okay, well, thanks for filling me in. And the last thing I'm going to say before I tell you guys, once again, have a great holidays. And it's just going to be 4 of us. We're going to keep it small, too. I've been hearing things, and it's been a few years since they made a run, but I would not count out Poland's boys and their girls basketball team. Just saying.
Coach Grisdale will definitely have that team playing some serious ball because he's a damn good coach. And
and on the girls' side, when you have Jackie Grisdale, that's half the battle.
Anything can happen. Look, I think the city of Warren, the Warren Harding girls, I don't think we've given them nearly as much respect as they should have. That is going to be a damn good basketball team. I think it will be.
I think so too. Yeah, I think so too. But I still say. And I still say that Boardman's girls are underrated, and I think people are getting tired of.
Boardman had to earn their stripes a little. No, they had to take a lick on the mouth on Monday. They went to Marlington, and
it was ugly.
Got ugly.
Well, a friend of mine who was a great coach, Coach Lyrica, always told me it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
And you have to remember they're under. You have to remember the girls in Boardman are under a new coach. It's going to take a minute for them to get acclimated to his system and his philosophy. So if they struggle to start, but then come February they're in full position, then they'll be fine.
Well, that's what we usually do. We really play the tough ones, so when it comes to the tournaments, we're already battle-tested because we have to go up to Cleveland. But once again, guys, you guys have a great show, and you guys have a great holidays, okay?
All right. Happy Thanksgiving, Emmanuel.
Thank you, man.
See ya.
The problem the Canfield girls are going to face is they're the smallest Division I school in the state of Ohio for their girls program, so they're going to run into a lot of trouble in the tournaments, and they're a really good team, but that's what happened to them last year. They ran into Harding in the district semifinals, and it was like, ugh. And then even if they beat Harding, Harding lost in the finals. So it's a gauntlet when you look at the Division I tournament, and especially when you're looking at Canfield, who's the smallest school in Division I.
Now, the only saving grace is the supercalifragilisticexpialidocious districts. The supersized districts that could very well have 2 teams go into the regionals. Who knows? So and that's something that we'll hopefully expand upon, of course, if there is basketball, since they shut it down for the most part, give or take a
we
few
still got
teams.
Mahoning County.
We still have Mahoning and Columbiana County, although Mahoning County is meeting today. Who knows? Who knows what happens? We're back on Monday. That I can tell you. That I can promise you. We're back on Monday. Have a great Thanksgiving. Have a great Black Friday. Enjoy the weekend, and we will talk on Monday. You've been listening to Running